body stuff feels like I wait. Your mind seems so innocent. Everything makes sense to you. They didn't do me. Did it from my school to the earth. Build up in your voice. Way of life, way of life. I heard you say we were on the same street. Way of life, way of my your mind seems so innocent. Everything makes sense to you. They didn't do me. Did it from my school to the earth. Build up in your voice. Way of life, way of life. I heard you say we were on the same street. Way of life, way of my life.
Okay. Oh wait, this is gonna be mono. Hold on. I'm only appearing in one ear right now. Let me see if I can fix that really quickly. Hold on. I know I'm probably... What happens if I do... Oh, down mix to mono. Okay, that should have fixed it. Okay. Oh my god. That's so funny. I was talking to myself this whole time. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I don't know why it did that, but we're good now. We're good now. Awesome. I'm so excited. We have a lot of stuff to talk about on stream. Thank you for all of the birthday wishes, guys. Yes, I'm turning 33 today. I'm an old man, an old ass man, if you could believe it. I am officially a grandpa, not to make everyone else feel old. Actually, I'm like technically relatively young compared to, not like young, but like, or I guess like, how should I say that? I'm not old compared to like the broader Final Fantasy fandom, I guess. Like I'm just like on the younger end, I guess, because the FF fandom goes all the way up to like 40s. You are older than old Sid. Yeah, I know. I feel it. I feel old. My knees are old. They ache when I use them too much. I can't go too crazy on my knees because my knees will like break in half. Don't feel bad. Being an old is my golden life. Like, listen, bro. Like, I mean, technically, it is the golden life, right? Like, the golden life is technically to become an old man. I mean, technically consider, right? Same age as Clive, yeah. Like, technically, that's the goal, right? become an old man, and then make as many people cry at your funeral as humanly possible. That is the ultimate goal. Have you started Final Fantasy 16 on PC yet? No, because I am waiting on someone to drop like a save file that has action mode complete, so that Final Fantasy mode can be immediately hopped into without having to replay the game on action. Lands the Master, thank you so much for this super chat. I appreciate it. I thought you were like 27. Good. 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 I have a very aggressive skincare routine to make sure that I stay looking as young as I can for as long as I can. Which everyone should have. Everyone should have. I do believe that taking care of yourself, longevity, you know, trying to stay in the gym, stay active, do those types of things, and keep yourself young as possible. Sponsored skincare regimen? No, no. That being said, if like, you know, if Neutrogena or someone wants to reach out to me about that, I think that gamers are an untapped market for that. So if you do want to reach out, sponsors, if you're watching, please let me know. We'll retire and play Final Fantasy 26 on our mind-controlled PlayStation 17. Yeah, I know. Drop the skincare routine. Oh man. Just make sure you're exfoliating. If you are past the age of like 28, start using like a retinol. Actually, like 25. I'd say like maybe like 26 or something. Vaughn, thank you for the super chat. Don't spend it all in one place. Oh, brother, I can stretch $5 to make it last a long while. You would not believe. Thank you so much, King. Appreciate it. Wear sunscreen. Yeah, absolutely wear sunscreen, guys. Like that's like the most important thing that you can actually do to take care of your skin, by the way, is to wear sunscreen. It's so important. And I feel like it's not really quite normalized yet or really emphasized in the way that it should be. There are like identical twins where they show the difference with like one twin wore sunscreen all the time and one twin didn't. And like the difference between the two twins is so staggeringly different. Like you would not believe how different it was. So it's really important for you to wear sunscreen because sun will damage your face like nothing else. So if you can do that, that will definitely keep you young for a long time, or looking young. Your kneecaps may not agree. Your kneecaps may not agree with how everything else is looking. Yeah. And I guess too, and also, yeah, skin cancer too. Not even just looking young, not even just about the aesthetics. Adam, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate you a ton, man. You guys are already making this birthday pop off like crazy. Thank you. I don't think he's retiring after 4. I think he'll wait till it's over. He comes off to me like Sakaguchi. I agree, by the way. We'll be talking about Nomura throwing out his retirement plans. I agree with what you're saying. I don't think he's gonna retire after 4. Like it's not like 4 is like his last game. I don't think he's doing anything like that. I think it sounds like he is thinking that the retirement comes eventually. This is the Bloodborne DLC stream, yeah? No. The Bloodborne DLC stream will probably actually happen tomorrow. But today, we have so much crap to discuss. It is actually kind of ridiculous how much we have to discuss today. And it's all really, 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 really important stuff. Like really important stuff. I was gonna even think about making a video. Midnight Sapphire, thank you Tier 1, appreciate you. 37 months. Incredible. Thank you. I was thinking about making a video on some of this stuff, but we actually have so much that I'm just going to talk about it on stream, and then maybe I'll just cut it down into a video. I'll cut some of these topics down into videos for everyone else who can't catch the stream. But we have a lot today. We have a lot. So we have so much that let's not like waste a super amount of time, and let's just go ahead and get into it. Because again, I cannot stress enough, this is a lot. Start with this guy right here. Oh boy. So there's been a lot of talk with Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth and the sales expectations of these games. There's been a lot of discourse on whether or not these games met expectations or not. And I think that this recent statement is only going to fuel the fire for whether or not these games actually did in fact meet expectations. And the reason I say that is because Square Enix has put out one of their financial reports today, and it has this sentence here about their HD games subsegment. And here is what the statement says. Here are our digital entertainment segment results. In the HD segment, in the HD games subsegment, we release multiple new titles, including major titles such as Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. But profits, unfortunately, did not meet our expectations. Net sales in the MMO and games for smart devices / PC browser subsegment were lower than previous fiscal year. I'll elaborate during my overview of the progress by the segment. But it's really this statement right here. Profits, unfortunately, did not meet our expectations. That has people talking. Now, of course, there's been two ways in which people are reading this statement. The first way that people are reading it is Final Fantasy 16 and Rebirth didn't meet expectations. The second way that people have been reading it is that they had a lot of other games that came out in the HD games division, such as the notorious hit Foam Stars. I'm pretty sure everyone here is a very, very big fan of Foam Stars. You may have heard of Foam Stars. It is the game of the year 2024. I don't think it even comes close. Astrobot, stand down, please. But the big question here, the big question is, which one of those is it? I have a third different interpretation of it, as I always do, because I am always kind of reading things a little bit different than a lot of other people are. So the way I kind of read into this statement is essentially that Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth probably did not meet expectations. They probably were profitable in some sense, but that still was not enough to cover for all the other failures that they had. Here is the reason that I say that. And that does, require me reading into it a little bit. However, I do think that they would not be talking about reevaluating their exclusivity deal if everything was going okay and according to plan, right? Like, you don't talk about redoing the exclusivity deal if everything went okay. That's what you do when things did not meet expectations. So I do think that, there probably was some dissatisfaction with the sales performance of these games. And not only that, there's also been industry analysts who have basically said that they don't think that the games really performed the way that they did. Let me see if I can actually pull that up. And no, it is not Mochizuki, for everyone who is wondering, because I know people are not very big fans of him per se. But I do think we can all agree on. I hope. So if you look at what Daniel Ahmad was saying, is that he said, this is one of the rare cases where Square Enix is being reasonable, as both games really did underperform compared to past entries. So, yeah, there you go. And Daniel Ahmad, again, very respected industry analyst. So I don't think this is just maybe me reading into it too much, or, you know, people reading the sentence wrong. I do think that it's reading both ways. I do think if you go back and look at it, it's essentially saying that, you know, these two probably didn't do what they were supposed to do. And also, you know, we had a lot of other failures in the meantime. And yeah, that's why HD game subsegment is the way that it is. Boy. Our games underperform, says the company who always complains about games. Right. And then, I mean, and to that point, I mean, that's why, you know, you even have Daniel Ahmad here saying that this is one of the rare cases where Square Enix is being reasonable, as both games really did underperform compared to past entries. So again, you have a pretty reliable industry analyst here saying that, like, it's not just Square Enix gaslighting on this one. That, you know, from an analyst who, you know, does have access to probably a ballpark of these numbers, he does feel that it probably did not meet expectations, or that it definitely did not meet expectations. So, and it's not just him; it's been some other industry analysts too that have talked about it. Again, more than just Mochizuki, who people have said that he kind of has a bias against Final Fantasy 16. So I don't think it's just him. Clearly, you know, looking at all the other all the other industry analysts and what they're saying, there does seem to be a bigger picture here about things not really quite performing the way they should. And that's another thing to talk about, is that David Tyler here says, well, a lot of AAA titles are suffering. That's another part of it too, is that a lot of this is a symptom of AAA, right? In AAA titles suffering, right? Like AAA is not in a good place. And so in some cases, or I should say in some ways, it's not just a problem with Final Fantasy specifically, as it is, you know, kind of an industry-wide problem too. So Frosty here saying, something interesting about Night Sky Prince, out of all the major Japanese companies, only Square Enix has been going PlayStation exclusive. Two massive studios at the moment from Japan are Capcom and FromSoft, both being multi-plat and building on years of success going back 1 or 2 console gens. FF does not have the same success these days. SE just isn't making AAA money to be making so many AAA games, and live services flop left and right. Hell, going PS exclusive in Japan right now doesn't seem smart either. You're right. They're not doing that. They're not doing that, and I don't know what the thought process is there, right? Because clearly they're not satisfied with it. However, with that being said, they have announced that going forward, they do want to bring these games to multi-platform. However, I think when we talk about multi-platform, you know, it's hard to talk about multi-platform without talking about the fact that Xbox is not doing particularly great this generation. I know there are some Xbox fans out there that probably, you know, don't want to hear that statement, but yeah, Xbox is not doing particularly great. When we talk about multi-platform, however, I do think, to me, what multi-platform really means is being on PC day one, right? So one of the things that we talked about in previous discussions is that Capcom, half of Capcom's profit comes from PC. Half. Which means that you have to add up which means you have to add up all the consoles together, right? To get Capcom's PC performance. Capcom is doing that well on PC. FromSoft also does really, really well on PC as well. So they're both doing really well on PC. And the fact that Square Enix is not on PC day one, right? Think about how huge the success of Final Fantasy 16 would have been on PC day one if people could have played that, right? There's only so many platforms that can really play these big HD games, and I do think that PC is one of them. And not only is PC one of them, too, you guys also got to think about Steam Deck, right? Like, Steam Deck has also added millions of units of hardware to the Steam ecosystem, right? And so, you have millions of people that are also playing games on their Steam Deck. Steam Deck has become a paradigm shift for me personally, right? Like, if I can play a game on PlayStation or I can get a game for Steam and play it on Steam Deck, I'm going to get it on Steam Deck, right? I'm going to get it on Steam. Like, every time. When Persona 3 Reload came out, I could have got that game on PS5, but guess what? I decided to get that game on Steam because I could also play Persona 3 Reload on my Steam Deck. I would have synced cloud saves, and I'd be able to play it both on my PC in HD, and I could play it on the go. And, honestly, I don't think I would have been able to get through Reload without it because Persona games are so long. It's just really hard to be able to sit and find the time to play through all of them. But when you have that on Steam Deck, it's really easy. And you don't have to sacrifice the graphics either because you can always boot it up on PC. I'm a really big fan of Steam Deck. But yeah, I think they need to be on PC day one. Crossy again saying, I said to you privately, Xbox could potentially go the way of Sega in 1 or 2 gens at this rate. I wholeheartedly believe that. I think that they're going the way of Sega next gen, bro. Like, like I think we may have like some Xbox hardware next gen, but I think that I believe the rumors that they would try to do like a Game Pass portable, like an Xbox on the go, because that's the only thing I think makes sense for them. I don't think it makes sense for Xbox to do another traditional game box in the way that like a PlayStation 6 would be, because I don't think that there is a market for it. I think that Xbox has been trending downward for a really long time. And I do think that's unfortunate, by the way. Like, let's not play console wars here, because I'm definitely not. I do not think that Sony not having competition is a good thing. I think that that is inherently bad. We all know how bad it is when these companies do not have competition. Things do not go good when there is not a competitor to pressure them to keep prices reasonable, to continue to make the best games that they can, because when that happens, it's like, where else are you going to go? You have to game with us, right? Like, if you want to play these third-party games, these 4K games in high quality, then where else are you going to go, right? And we saw the peak of Sony arrogance with the PlayStation 3, right? PlayStation 2 dominated so hard that Sony thought nobody could ever even think about touching them. Because of that, they made the PlayStation 3. $600 system. And they even said things like, you're going to want to work 2 jobs in order to play a PlayStation 3. A ridiculous statement. But that's exactly what happens when you have no competition. Who is going to stop you? Nobody. And yeah, even though Nintendo is technically a competitor, Nintendo is not really a competitor in a direct way, right? Like, for the most part, it's not like my Switch necessarily means I won't buy a PlayStation, right? Because it's 2 different sets of games. And for most gamers, they're going to get a Switch and a PlayStation, right? Like, it's hard for me to imagine me only owning a Nintendo console. personally, that would not be a thing I would be able to do. Because I like other games. I like other games. I don't just like Nintendo stuff. Like, I do like Nintendo stuff. But Nintendo first party is not enough to sustain me, right? Like, if the Switch could reasonably play Elden Ring, maybe it would be feasible for gamers to only own a Switch, right? And from what we're seeing of Switch 2 leaks, it does not seem like the Switch 2 is going to be more powerful than a Steam Deck, right? Because according to the leaks that we got today, the Nintendo Switch 2, which is tentatively what we're calling it here, Nintendo Switch 2 has like less RAM than the Steam Deck by like 4 gigabytes. I think that Steam Deck has like 16 gigabytes of RAM, and the Switch 2 is rumored to have like 12. The GPU is not going to be as powerful as a Steam Deck's. So it'll probably be able to play some PS4 games, but I don't expect it to be like, you know, much better than like what Steam Deck currently does. So all of this is to say, I do think that Square Enix does need to start putting these games out on PC day one. I think that is the biggest thing that they could probably do to change things around from where they currently are. A lot of people would ask me, like with Final Fantasy 16 in particular, but also with Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, right? Because a lot of my friends, they'll see Final Fantasy games, they'll ask me about it because they know what I do. And a lot of the times they'll be like, oh, I don't have a PS5 yet. Can I pick it up on PC? I've gotten asked that question like a dozen times when these games were coming out. And I would have to tell them, oh, no, dude, I'm sorry. It's not coming to PC. And again, with Final Fantasy 16 in particular, I swear to you, I got asked a dozen times, is Final Fantasy 16 coming to PC? I want to play it on PC. I got asked so many times about it. And of course, now it is officially out on PC. But it was really clear to me at that time that a lot of people were like, I haven't upgraded to PS5 yet. I just want to play it on PC, and they couldn't do it. So, man, 16 is trash on PC. That's another thing too. They need to put out good PC ports. This has been a huge problem for a really long time. They need to put out good PC ports. Being on PC day one is not good enough if, you know, the fans are going to have to fix it. Because the thing about PC is always the best place to play. But the problem with PC is that it's not always the best place to play on day one. And it doesn't, a lot of the times, it doesn't become the best place to play because of the actual devs. It becomes the best place to play because the community fixes the very bad work that was laid out by the devs. I have not spent enough time with the Final Fantasy 16 PC port to have an opinion on it, by the way, so I can't really tell you. I've heard some mixed things. Some people seem to be fine with it, some people aren't. The 30 FPS cap can be fixed with a mod already. People have already fixed that. Ultra-wide support can also be fixed. Because the game, by the way, does support ultra-wide. It just is not enabled in the actual game. Like, there's no setting for it. But if you go in and tweak the settings, like with like a config file, like you can actually enable ultra wide on Final Fantasy 16 and it runs just fine. Yeah, like it's a mod, and it's a mod that people were able to make in the demo. So again, it's one of those things where if fans were able to come in and use the demo, not have the source code, fix a couple of config files, dude, and fix the 30 FPS limit, fix the lack of ultra wide. Why couldn't you do that? Why couldn't you, the developer with access to the source code, do that? You know, how was someone able to do that? You know, basically with the demo, right? Because that's where they started modding this. And it all runs fine. It all runs just fine. It's just mind-blowing. So Square has to get it together, man, on this type of stuff. They really do. And when it comes to the profit expectations here, what it comes down to is that regardless of whether Final Fantasy 16 or Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth were very profitable titles or not, the HD Games division did not see a profit. And if they were profitable in a tremendous way, this still kind of like is like, what is going on with management, right? Like, what is going on with a lot of the decisions that are happening? Because it's like, basically, how should I say? At some point, something is being tremendously mismanaged, right? So if these titles are profitable and HD Games as a whole is not, then it really says you guys are like effing up somewhere in the pipeline. Whether it's creating titles like Foam Stars, which I think we all agree, objectively a bad decision. Right? There's no arguing against that. And then when it comes to putting out these titles too, again, they're not available on PC day one, and I think that is just a huge L. And honestly too, if they could make them available for Switch 2, now I don't know if Switch 2 will be able to run Final Fantasy 16 or Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. It's hard to imagine Switch 2 being able to run Final Fantasy 16 in particular, because the Steam Deck currently cannot run Final Fantasy 16 at a stable 30. Maybe if the devs go in there and they're able to scale down the game, they could get it running on Steam Deck and maybe even running on Switch 2. I don't know. But really, the only reason I emphasize a Switch 2 port for these games is because that would do really well in Japan. Japan would definitely buy these games on Switch. But right now, the PlayStation market is just not there in Japan. You know? Isn't porting to Switch a pain? Not porting to Switch, porting to Switch 2. Number 2. Numero uno. Or number 2, not numero. That's number. Anyway, disregard that. High quality visuals from Sony sell a lot, especially high quality visuals from Sony sell a lot, especially on PC. Square Enix should realize that. Yeah. Resident Evil 4 got like 168 concurrent players on PC day one. Yeah. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about, man. Like, Capcom is doing phenomenally well on PC, and Square Enix is ignoring PC. They're putting out half-baked PC ports a year to a year and a half later, right? And you can't do that. And, you know, look at Wukong, right? Like, Wukong did so well on PC, in China specifically. And I don't know if you guys really know, but like, because we always talk about consoles being really dominant in, you know, like the Western Hemisphere and to a degree in Japan, or Japan tends to prefer Switch and mobile. But really, like, if we talk about Asia, PC gaming is really huge there. PC gaming is very dominant in Asia, especially in China, which is why Wukong was able to do so well. As I told Limitless on Twitter, they need to stop starting over when it comes to engine and combat system. PS1 should continue using Unreal and the hybrid system, and CS3 should should use Radic engine and the character action system. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. I do think that there is a brand problem with Final Fantasy. Like, there's a brand problem. You cannot describe what type of game Final Fantasy is anymore. You can't do it. I know that some people view that as a strength of this series, but I don't view it as a strength anymore. I view it as kind of a weakness. And that's not to say that they shouldn't try to innovate and try new things. I actually think that's still a strength of Final Fantasy. But it can't just be like a random thing each time. And I think that that's what they've been doing, is that each time it's a different thing, in like entirely different thing, right? And I don't think that was the case when you look at their most successful era of games, which was 1 through 10, right? Where Final Fantasy was a very consistent, very well-defined thing. And those games are still praised and loved to this day. Like, people still adore those games, right? So I don't think, in my view, the solution is to just keep doing like the random thing. I think the reason they keep doing the quote-unquote random thing is because they haven't found something that really sticks yet, right? They thought that Final Fantasy XIII's combat would kind of be like the new ATB system that would kind of replace the kind of classic ATB system and sort of be like this new evolution of what the classic system would be. And while I do think that 13's command synergy system is a bit underrated, I don't think it ended up being received as well as it needs to be in order to like replace what the classic turn-based system was. However, CPU3 was CPU1 though was then able to kind of evolve that into Final Fantasy VII Remix combat, right? Because that's kind of the next evolution of what command synergy was, you know, building up an ATB bar and then unleashing it. And that combat has done really well, I think. And so I think that they should continue to stick with that. I think it allows for all the Final Fantasy expectations that we talk about to stick around, because that's one of the things that has kind of fell off in the later years, is that the things that people expect from a Final Fantasy game are no longer present, right? Like if you talk about airships in a world map, and you talk about ATB and being able to control party members and all this stuff, all the things that people want from a Final Fantasy game, and that, like, for the most part, the first 10 games provided, minus 10 having a world map, you know? People get really excited about that stuff. And the reason they get excited about it is because those are the things that people kind of like foundationally expect and crave from Final Fantasy. It's the things that they want Final Fantasy to be, right? And I can just mention those things in a new Final Fantasy game in a video, and the excitement explodes, right? Like seeing party members, seeing a world map. People still want those things, right? On the topic of FF brand strength, as long as fans need to have a serious talk about remakes not being the best solution to grow the brand strength and draw new fans, least of all that remakes don't really stand alone and are more like sequels than remakes, they're limiting the potential customer base. Oh my god, Repodeski, thank you so much for the 5 gift subs. Holy crap, dude. You're the best. I hope you've been doing well. Dude, thank you for the birthday wishes. You're so awesome, man. You're the best. I still need to have you on here. Maybe I can try to see if I can have you on here like next month. I know I keep saying that, but I haven't done my podcast series in a while. We're gonna do that. They're just limiting the potential customer base every time to existing fans. Fans with each release seem to be lessening it by the usual sequel fatigue or the loss of faith in the dev such stories. Yeah. I don't think that remakes are really the big paradigm shift that's going to get like a ton of people in. I think what they need to do is create Final Fantasy 17 and really knock it out of the park and have it available on every platform that will support it on day one. I think that's what it really is. because I genuinely believe that if Square Enix made Final Fantasy 17 and it played like Rebirth, right, where it had like a world map and it had party members that you can control, and it had like all these different towns and cities and a ton of side quests and things to do, I think that if you launched that with a brand new story and brand new characters, and it would be something that anyone can access from day one, I think that would have sold like, 10 million copies lifetime. I think it would have done really, really well. I think it would have blown up. Because the whole time I was playing Rebirth, I couldn't help but think, why isn't this Final Fantasy 17? And I love FF7, right? Like, I love FF7. But I couldn't help but think the volume of content, the quality of the game, the world map, all these things. As I was looking at it, I was like, why have we not got a numbered FF title that has had all these things that people have been asking for over a decade? And it's all here in this title. And of course it's here in this title because it's a remake. It has to be there. But it's modernized so well. It's done so well. The volume of content is so big. And I just could not understand why the decision to make a game like this was done with just a remake of Final Fantasy VII and hasn't been the course of direction for Final Fantasy for a while now, right? Like it's kind of mind-blowing to me. I think that it's hard to ignore that as a question. Right? Like, and that's not to say that Rebirth is perfect or that Rebirth couldn't use like some changes, or Rebirth couldn't be better in like a few aspects. Because I think it could be, but like Rebirth is like the right direction. It's the right, like, it's like go north. Well, Rebirth is north, right? It may not be like the northmost thing, but it's like it's the right direction. It's the way they're supposed to be going. And it just blows my mind that it took remaking FF7 to just figure out that people actually, people really liked classic Final Fantasy, and they just want you to try to modernize classic Final Fantasy. Hell, a lot of them don't even want you to modernize classic. They just straight up want a traditional turn-based, world map game. And I understand why they're not actually trying to make that. However, I do think that people still want the FF conventions, right? Like, people still want a world map, an airship, party members. I think whatever they make next has to incorporate those things. They can do whatever, right? Like, but I feel like people, and I'm saying this specifically from the perspective of an FF content creator. Like, I see excitement go up and down based on these things. I read the comments. I see what people are saying. I'm exposed to so much of this discourse to a mentally ill degree. And by that, I mean, like, it literally impacts like my own mental health to like how much of this discourse that I see. And I intuitively know, like, the ways in which like the excitement is going to be moved by certain announcements and stuff. Every time party members become playable, or more than one character becomes playable, people go nuts. People go nuts. They love it. They love it. And every time party members are not playable, it becomes the discourse of the game for the entirety of the game's life cycle, right? Final Fantasy 15, right? Remember when it was advertised that you'd be able to play as all the characters? And then, like, holy crap, man. People were outraged. Outraged. When the game came out and, like, you couldn't do it. 15 got so much more lovable when they became playable. I got so much more love when they became playable, sorry. Yeah, like, then all of a sudden people were like, oh yeah, I should give 15 a second chance. Because now all the party members are playable. And people started to really love it. Yeah, I don't get it after 15 how CPU3 doubled down on it for 16. I think that was like kind of crazy, right? That they did do that, because I think that like 15 got so much flack for doing it that it was kind of weird that they doubled down on it, because 15 got so much hate for it, dude. 15 got so much hate for not having the playable party members on day one. And I think that a lot of people actually would have moved the needle for how they felt on 16 if you were able to control Jill, or if you were able to control Joshua or Dion. I think for a lot of people that would have been like if people would have gave like 16 like an 8, I feel like they would have gave it like an 8.5 or 9 if they could control all the characters. Like, I think it would have really helped the perception of that game a lot for people. On the bright side for SE, Foam Stars lasted longer than Concord. Yeah. True. Oh my god, let me drink water real quick. I'm like out of breath. Give me 1 second. Whenever I'm out of breath, that's when you know the chat is like we're going crazy today. Whenever I'm like short of breath and like my throat's dry and like it's because I just like I'm popping off too hard and like yeah. Like chat is going crazy right now. You guys are awesome. I do find it weird that the combat director of Devil May Cry 5, where you can play as Dante, Nero, and V, and Virgil, let us only play as Clyde. I think about that a lot. I think about that a lot. The DMC5, like 10-hour game, like lets you control more characters than like Final Fantasy 16 50-hour game. I do think about that a lot. Like Square needs more IPs developed by them, not their Western studios or live service. I feel like they are hard focusing on making their value directors continue to make sequels, spin-offs, or of other already existing franchises. How many people have you encountered asking or assuming they've already played previous FFs to understand the current ones? Yeah. 100%. 100%. You know, I get that asked to me every time by casual friends. We're like, oh, I'm thinking about making, 16 my first one, or 17 my first, or sorry, 7R my first one. And, they'll ask me, do I need to know anything? Play them. And I'll just be like, no, just go ahead and play them. But it's interesting that a lot of casuals do think that, and they've talked about maybe, dropping the numbers that people don't have to like think about it. Personally, I'm neither here nor there with that. I think that people can understand numbers. I don't think the numbers is really going to make a tremendous amount of difference. Like, Resident Evil's done it with Village, but it's just so hard for me to say, because the other side of dropping the number is also dropping the importance, like the significance. So numbers kind of are good in a way. It's why we've never had like PlayStation come out with like, oh, this is a bad thing, right? Like, in fact, you know what's funny? The only time PlayStation's ever had a failed console is when they broke the number. So when we had PSP and they went with PlayStation Vita instead of PSP2, that's the only time we've had a failed console from Sony. So I do believe in the power of the number, but I also understand that the number can like inherently gatekeep or create a barrier, I should say, from the user wanting to pick something up. So it's really hard for me to say, like, is the number a good thing or not? I don't know. I really don't know. I think that they should experiment with it. They should make Final Fantasy 17 a thing like Village, where it's still, Resident Evil 8, so it'd still be Final Fantasy 17. The name wouldn't have to be in there, but they can like minimize the number and see what that does to sales, right? See what that does for the marketing. And yeah, just experiment. If it doesn't work, then just call the next game Final Fantasy 18 and then retroactively call the game Final Fantasy 17. That's what I would do. I would like dip my toe halfway into it in such a way that all the hardcore people that need it to be called 17, in the same way that all the hardcore Resident Evil fans who need Resident Evil 8 to be called Resident Evil 8, it's still Resident Evil 8 for them. But it's also Resident Evil Village for, like, you know, the regular guy going to pick up the latest Resident Evil game because he thought it looked cool. The number is a good thing until you reach a point. After a while, you end up with, like, iPhone. Yeah. NSP, you're a man of culture. Oh, thank you so much. So, I don't know. I think that this is going to lead to a good point for Square. I want us to leave off on this topic in an optimistic way. I do think that we are going to see the Capcom era for Square Enix. And by that, I mean kind of the next renaissance, I guess. Probably a terrible, wrong word for it. But I do think that we're going to see an improvement in Square going forward. However, I also think that it is going to come with some pains, and it's going to come with them hitting some low points, and I think that this is the low point. I think that things are going to look up from here. I really do trust Kiryu-san, the new CEO. I think he's been talking a lot of things that make really good sense to me. I think that he knows what he's doing. I think the fact that they are not as obsessed with continuing their Sony exclusivity contracts is a very good thing. I think that that's smart. They also need to be on PC day one. There is just no excuse for them not to be on PC day one. It is probably the biggest flaw in their strategies. If anything, they can negotiate a contract with Square Enix. I mean, they can negotiate a contract with... they should negotiate a contract with Sony that allows them to be on PC day one and just have console exclusivity to the latest PlayStation. At the very least, right? Like PS5 and PC. I think that's good. That's acceptable. But I don't think it's acceptable to only have it on PlayStation 5 anymore, right? Because clearly that has not been working out for them. And then also marketing too, right? I think that marketing needs to be stepped up. They are retooling their marketing right now. They are making it so that they're trying to basically really improve their marketing. So they've been overhauling their marketing entirely. Unfortunately, this has come with a lot of layoffs, but they see that as necessary in order to restructure their teams and to actually get these games out there for people to really know about them and really do well with them. So with Final Fantasy 16 in particular, man, I feel like the good marketing for that game came at the tail end, right? Because people were intensely negative about FF16 before it came out. And it was really the demo and the marketing event that happened, the big launch event for Final Fantasy 16, the one that I got invited to. That's really when I saw people turn around on Final Fantasy 16 and they became excited for it. And, you know, I'm willing to bet their pre-orders absolutely exploded after that demo, because the demo is when people are like, oh man, this game is really good. The demo changed people's minds like really hard. And the demo for the game was really good. It was one of the best demos ever. I think that Final Fantasy 16 has one of the best openings to a video game that I've ever seen. I'd probably put it in my top 10 video game openings ever. The demo is a false representation of the game. No comment. No comment. But yeah. Does it matter if sales were behind expectations if Sony gave Square a lot of money for exclusivity? I would go back and look at the Jacob Novik post. I did a video on it, and I think he actually explains why that's still kind of the case, about why the sales were behind. Because I would have thought the same as you. I would be like, well, they still got paid, right, from Sony. So it's like, what does it matter? But I think he kind of broke it down in a way that made it make sense. I would have to pull up the whole thread and explain it again on here. But yeah, if you want to look into that, I'd look into that. That demo was fire. I didn't realize we'd get 14 styles quests for the rest of the game. I guess they really took they did lean a bit too much into like Final Fantasy 14 game design. I think that's like one of the biggest mistakes that they made was like because they knew how to make 14 and 14's all they've been making for the past decade. And so I think they really made more 14. And yeah, that works really well for an MMO. Especially an MMO where you constantly have new things coming to it, constantly getting new features. It does not work as well for a single player game where you are not really expecting to do MMO style quests. FF14 game design, now that a lot of FF14s are tired of it and want them to consider revamping. Yeah, that's another thing too. Like, even FF14 fans are kind of getting tired of FF14's game design. Now, the reason FF14's game design has stayed stagnant for so long is that the problem is that people. The problem is that Yoshi P is very precise as a producer when it comes to the cost and the amount of time that it takes to produce something. And so, because of that, he sets out to make an exact number of bosses, right? An exact number of dungeons, exact number of trials, etc. And the reason that he does this, the reason that it's so formulaic, is because when you're able to know the exact number of everything each time, and you proportion and ration it that way each time, what ends up happening is that you're able to consistently produce that result. You're able to know budget-wise exactly what that's going to look like each time. In terms of staff, you know exactly how many people you need to make a dungeon, you know, to make a trial, etc. Because of that, you're able to manage that stuff really well. You know very predictably how things are going to do and how they're going to go over budget-wise, management-wise, you know, human resource-wise, all these different things. It's all very consistent. The problem is, though, is that even though it's very, very good for the developer because they know exactly what they're going to be doing each time, the problem is that for the player, it's kind of boring, right? Because content-wise, you know exactly what's going to happen each time. And so it does lead to some very predictable, very you know what to expect game design. And so I'm not terribly surprised if Final Fantasy 14 fans are like getting kind of tired of it. Like, I understand. You know, we've had many expansions now of kind of the same thing to varying quality, and so I do think that they probably should revamp. Okay. Is that also why they only voice like 1/3 of the dialogue in 14? I'm always disappointed when I'm in voiceless dialogue scenes. It's a big reason why, yeah. It's a big reason why. The other reason is that is the time constraints, but I guess that files under what I was talking about with making very consistent content on a schedule. It's how they manage to stay so consistent with minimal delays, right? It's why they're able to deliver that content at a very steady cadence because they know exactly what they're going to be making each time. And also, yeah, they voice FF14 in a ton of languages. And I think it's great that a lot of languages have access to 14, but man, it does make me wish that they, and I guess this isn't really fair to say, but it does make me wish that they just focused on English and Japanese. Because I feel like most people play in one of those, you know. to begin with. Even people in other countries will tend to play in either the original Japanese or the English dub, and so I do kind of wish that, like, it's possible to just focus on those two so that they could just do full voice acting. Because yeah, honestly, even if the game was only in Japanese, I think I'd prefer having just full Japanese voice acting over having like only some parts of the game are voiced. It would help a lot. Full voice would fix a lot of the pacing problems in 14, though. There are some cutscenes that really should be voiced that aren't, and people tend to skip the non-voice ones at times, so then it really skews people's perspective further. Yeah, Dawn Trail hit a really, really, really nasty like speed bump with that. Let's just say, like, with Dawn Trail, people. And it's really weird because even in the early game, I noticed that, like, with Dawn Trail, that, like, I was like, why isn't this voiced? Like, I feel like if I was playing Shadowbringers, this would be like a voiced. It was very strange, right? Because I feel like, especially in Shadowbringers and Endwalker, the appropriate scenes were voiced in those two expansions, right? There weren't too many scenes where I was like, damn, like, why isn't this scene voiced? Like, most of the scenes that weren't voiced in those expansions, it really felt like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine, that's fine. But like, I do think in like Dawn Trail, it does seem like a lot of the scenes that would have tremendously benefited the story's impact were not voiced, and it is. We're gonna move to the Nomura thing in a second. Dawn Trail won't voice important scenes with named characters, but here's 3 back-to-back random dialogues with Luke Lamont, because Square really wants people to like her, unaware that. Yeah, I mean, that was the thing, right? Like, they would voice like taco scenes and not like character, like actual, like, really important character stuff. Tiffany, hello. FF14 doesn't matter until Artbert comes back. Thank you. What a base take. Thank you, Tiffany. I'm joking, please. No. I'm waiting for us to have that scene. I'm waiting for that to have that scene where Artbert, like, comes out of us for just like a split second, right? We have that scene where Artbert, like, pops out and he starts saying some stuff, like talking through us. And it's just like that really big payoff moment. I miss him so much. Artbert was such a good character. He was such a good character. I think he's my second favorite character in the whole game. First favorite probably has to be Emmett still. Are we going to talk about TGS? Yeah, we're going to talk about TGS. That's the other 2 topics I have planned for the day. Is that we're going to talk about Nomura, the Nomura interview, and then we're going to talk about the what do you call it? We're going to talk about the thing. Okay, here we go. Let me see. Yeah, that's what I have here for the agenda for the day. Hold on. I'm trying to catch my breath. Am I going to TGS? I wish I was going to TGS, chat. I feel like 14 plays way too safe nowadays with their stories, really. I haven't finished Dawn Trail, so I can't even say, honestly. I can't say yet. I still have to finish Dawn Trail. Which, by the way, we're gonna start the Bloodborne DLC tomorrow, probably. Am I going to TwitchCon? I wish I was going to TwitchCon. I'm not. I'm planning to start going to more cons next year. Like, that's kind of like on my agenda. So if you guys like want to meet me at a con, that might be a thing that can happen soon. Because I'm like, I feel like after COVID, I became too shut in, and it's really funny because I used to be at like every convention for everything ever. And then after COVID, I became so shut in. When am I going to see your massive arms? You've already seen my well, actually I lied. You saw me, that was like a year ago, and I made so many gains since. But you'll see my massive arms soon, sleep easy. I promise. We would all love Nomura to not retire, but guys, he's yeah, I don't know. I can't imagine him retiring. But let's take a look at this interview. So this is an interview with Tetsuya Nomura, which was done by Young Jump publication. I have went ahead and took the liberty of translating this interview. I translated it through ChatGPT. So I just want to let you guys know that really quickly, that I did do that through ChatGPT. And as a result, this is machine-based translation. And so please realize that there could be some nuance that is not quite correct, or that is not 100%. And so as a result, it may not be 100% perfect. However, I use ChatGPT over Google Translate because Google Translate is notoriously not that great. However, GPT translation is pretty good. GPT translation can be like almost like completely accurate in a lot of cases. It's really good. I don't think anything ever beats a human when it comes to translation, like a actual bilingual human. However, GPT translation is probably the best machine translation you can get. And in this interview, Nomura has even thrown out that potentially, he's thinking about retiring, and he's even thrown out that Kingdom Hearts 4 could be leading into the finale of the series. We got quite a bit to dive into today with this interview. Starfire, thank you for the sub. I appreciate it. Thank you for becoming a member on YouTube. Holy crap. Midnight Sapphire, also, thank you for the 10 tier 1 gift subs. Jesus Christ. Midnight, you are the best. Thank you. Thank you, 100 trillion. Midnight basically keeps us in business. Thank you so much. Thank you, Starfire, for the birthday wishes. I really appreciate it. I thank all of you again for all of the birthday wishes. I'm going to keep doing this YouTube thing for as long as I'm healthy and well, to be able to keep making content for you guys. So thank you so much for continuing to make that possible. So let's just go ahead and dive into this interview here, because there's a lot of interesting things to discuss about Final Fantasy VII and about Kingdom Hearts, right? So to commemorate the 45th anniversary of Young Jump, we're conducting a special series of interviews. In this second part, we dive into an exclusive interview with Tetsuya Nomura, the creative director behind the highly anticipated title Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, released in 2024. We'll explore the appeal of this creator, known for producing overwhelmingly unique and innovative works. So, the long-awaited second installment of Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, was released this year. Could you tell us about your goals that you hope to achieve with this work? Rather than the overall goal of Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy is to correct and unify distorted perceptions. In most cases, a remake typically means improving the visuals while keeping the game and the story the same. However, over 20 years have passed since the original. Simply making the graphics prettier would not fit today's era. I also think players' memories of the original have been altered by nostalgia. I believe there are many people who continuously played Final Fantasy VII over those 22 years. Their memories of the game have gradually shifted in different ways for each individual. Furthermore, Final Fantasy VII has had various spin-offs, which sometimes depict scenes differently from the original. As a result, I believe there is a subtle distortion of perception in the memories of players. If you play it again now, you might think, wait, does this seem like this? I remember it differently. I feel this way too, but our writer Nojima was especially concerned about this distortion of perception. We wanted to bring everything together in one unified vision. Let me zoom in on this really quickly so you guys can see it a little bit better, and I'll make myself a little bit smaller. There we go. That's perfect. You know, this is something that is really true, right? Like just taking Crisis Core alone, there is a drastic difference between some of these scenes, right? Like some of the scenes in Crisis Core, way different than the scenes that are in, you know, Final Fantasy VII Original. And so because of that, you know, there's just like this discrepancy. There are so many different versions of like the Nibelheim incident, for example, right? I think there's the OG, there's the Last Order, which is the anime, there's Crisis Core, and then now there is Final Fantasy VII Re-Trilogy, right? That's like 4 different interpretations, I believe. And hell, there might even be a 5th one out there. I don't know. But there's a lot. There's a lot of different interpretations of that same scene. And so as a result, unifying them all through the compilation is a really good idea. And again, like he mentions, there has just been so many different versions of Final Fantasy VII's key events that you need to bring cohesion to all of them. So that's a statement that that I really get. And I think they talk more about that here in the next part of the interview. That distortion of perception due to the spin-off works is something I personally felt as well. How is this distortion expressed within the game? In the scene near the end of the game, where Sephiroth appears in a white space and Cloud flies toward him, various visions can be seen. Among those visions, there are probably elements of the Final Fantasy VII world that exist within the player's heart. Each one is a version of Final Fantasy VII, but they're all slightly different. It's like there are multiple parallel worlds. For example, in World A, this character is alive, but in World B, they aren't. While the differences are made clear in that way, players have different interpretations, and over time, memories have been rewritten, or spin-offs have caused some discrepancies. In this work too, we let players experience several different layers of the world. Those visions represent such ideas. Oh boy. Oh boy. That's actually a pretty loaded statement. He's essentially saying here that these different worlds almost kind of represent different perceptions of Final Fantasy VII and different desires. With Final Fantasy VII, that's really interesting. At a meta, this is kind of like what the conclusion I've come to with like what FF7 Re-Trilogy is doing, right? Is that it is a remake that is aware of the fact that it's a remake. Like fundamentally, that's what this is. And he kind of spells this out, right? The white space where Cloud is going through essentially the multiverse, and he can see all these different versions of Final Fantasy VII. He's basically taking all these different people's memories of what Final Fantasy VII is, and everyone has a very, very, very different memory of Final Fantasy VII, and he's expressing all of them, right? He's trying to express all of them in one story. That's a very interesting concept, I think. Final Fantasy VII is really interesting in the way that I don't think I've seen another game where so many people have so many different interpretations from it. Like your Final Fantasy VII and my Final Fantasy VII are probably not the same, right? Like a lot of people's perception of FF7, for example, just like arbitrarily, will be framed around like Kingdom Hearts 2 and Cloud's appearance in like Kingdom Hearts 2. Some people came in Advent Children, right? And so their perception of these characters is based on AC or Crisis Core. And a lot of these different pieces of media have different perceptions of these characters. And then you have, you know, if you're like 30 plus, well, your perception of Final Fantasy VII is very much primed around the original, right? But even if your perception is fixed around the original, you know, the original FF7 is almost 3 decades old now. As a result, even your perception gets kind of warped over time due to the fact that you've lived a lot of years probably since you first played it. And you're thinking back on events from a long time ago, you know, even just remembering events from a few weeks or a few years ago is, you know, it's very different. And so all of this is to say that everyone's belief about like what Final Fantasy VII is or how it's supposed to be is fundamentally different depending on who you are. Every copy of Final Fantasy VII is personalized. Yeah, every copy is personalized. It really is. It is unironically the Super Mario 64 meme, like 100%. Next, we're talking about based. We're talking about the world map. The world map has returned in Rebirth. Were you able to finally realize your ideal vision of the world map? Nomura says, yes, that's right. This is truly thanks to the hard work of the dev team. I think we're able to present a world map that everyone, including us, has dreamed of for Final Fantasy VII. Honestly, not just Final Fantasy VII. Like, for real, it's kind of the world map I have dreamed of, period. For like HD modern Final Fantasy. It is exactly what I want the world map to be. Now, if only you can put a flyable airship on top of it, I will be complete as a human being. That's all I want. Give me that world map again and give it to me with an airship, and that's exactly what we're going to be getting with Final Fantasy VII Part 3. Continuing onward, he says, the game is rich with mini-games, exploration elements. Was your intent to encourage players to explore every corner of the vast world map? Yes, that's exactly the case. Without a goal, there would be no motivation to explore every corner, and players would end up wandering aimlessly through a large world. That would defeat the purpose of having a vast world map. So we packed in all sorts of elements, ensuring that So we packed in all sorts of elements, ensuring that as players explore, they'll make discoveries and feel rewarded for their efforts. And I do think that that did end up being the case with Rebirth, and I feel like it's going to be even more the case with the next game for sure. Yeah, we'll be taking a look at the Digital Foundry video after this, just so you guys know. In manga, the protagonist is not often portrayed as a handsome character, but in the works you create, there seem to be so many cool-looking characters. What do you consider when designing the protagonist? Huh? Do manga not make handsome protagonists? Or protagonist handsome? For example, Naruto or Luffy aren't treated as handsome characters in the story, right? I see. The reason I make protagonists cool stems from an experience I had in high school. One of my classmates was playing a game, and the protagonist of that game wasn't cool. My friend said something like, "Why do I have to be ugly even in a game?" I really wonder what game this was that left a big impression on me. From that experience, I came to the conclusion that in games, people want to look cool. That's how I design protagonists. Okay, straight up, I agree with this. Like, I do not want my self-insert for a story to just be a regular guy. Right? Like, if I'm like living a fantasy through a character, I want to be hot in the story. I want to be a cool guy, right? Like, I want to be awesome. Is that just me? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't really see a point in not being cool and handsome in like a game where I'm supposed to be, you know, trying to immerse myself in the character. And like the character is like supposed to be like, you know, like an unattractive, like ugly guy. Like, I want to be cool. I want to be Giga Chad in the game. Somewhere in between a regular guy and a supermodel. Leon Kennedy. Right? Like, that's what I want to be. Right? Like, I want to be someone cool in a game. I don't want to be, you know, some guy that's not cool. Do you have a favorite antagonist? Sephiroth is the most beloved character, but he's also a handsome guy. Well, I really like Organization 13, but I feel that without their unique personalities, their designs wouldn't have stood out much. It's the combination of inner traits and outward appearance that creates strong character presence. Their personalities are indeed captivating. Out of the members of Organization 13, who is your favorite? I'd have to say Zigbard and Luxord. I really like them. I think I actually highlighted the wrong parts here. Hold on. Oh wait, did I? Oh no, I didn't. That's fine. I tried to like bold the interviewer question. That's Nomura asking him. Oh wait, is that Nomura? Wait, what did I have up here? I kind of got confused here. Do you have a favorite antagonist? Oh yeah, that's the interviewer questions with Dash here. Okay, sorry. Okay, I fixed that. Older characters working behind the scenes, huh? Laughs. In Rebirth, the party members are finally assembled, and the interactions between the characters are a major highlight. What do you think is the reason for the enduring popularity of Final Fantasy VII's characters? As I mentioned before, I can only experiment with the villains, but Final Fantasy VII was the first project I was deeply involved in both the personality and design of the characters. Because I was still young back then, I didn't fully understand the conventions of character designs, so I just wanted to make as many unique characters as possible. If you think about it, Final Fantasy VII has a really strange party, doesn't it? I mean, not wrong, but I like it. Like the interviewer says here, that's true. Even their silhouettes are so distinctive. I think that's what made them so appealing. For example, Red 13 is a four-legged character, but if you think about it, having a quadrupedal character in the party changes the way the game's systems control. You wouldn't normally add a four-legged character to the party. Kate Sith and the big Moogle he rides. Those count as two characters, right? There are a lot of things like that, which I would call the recklessness of youth. Yeah. Guys, for game development, this is kind of a big no-no, right? Like, this is kind of a thing that you don't really do. And the reason that you don't really do that is because you kind of have to create entirely different animation systems just for Red 13, right? Like, you have to have stuff in place just to handle him as a quadrupedal character that has to move around and do that type of stuff, right? In an action game, that's really difficult to do, right? It wasn't so bad in a turn-based game back in the day, but nowadays, in a modern game, a modern Unreal Engine game, it's actually quite troubling. So that's kind of what he means when he says that, like, oh yeah, you know, you really wouldn't want to do that nowadays. That's not what I would do if I was approaching this, because I'd be considering, you know, the technology and what we have to implement. But back then, you know, when things were simpler and when combat was turn-based and that wasn't a huge deal, you were able to do that sort of thing. So Teruyuki Endo is an absolute prodigy in how he melds Kate Sith and Red 13's gameplay and characters. I remember a previous interview back in FF7 Remake that Tifa's combat was the most difficult character to design for, which makes sense given how she has to differ from being a melee than Cloud. Yeah. Like, it's really cool how all those different characters functions, and that's like one of the things like why I say you can take Final Fantasy VII combat, like re-trilogy combat, and then put it in the Final Fantasy 17, because I feel like just having different characters fundamentally changes everything about the way that combat system is, while still keeping the foundations of hit the enemy, build up ATB, and then unleash that ATB, right? So it's hard for that combat system to really get stale when just literally changing the character that you control is going to be something that fundamentally alters the way that combat system works, right? So I feel like that combat system has enough gas in it to go for a really, really long time. And I think that they should stick with it, you know? but knowing Square, they'll pump and dump like they typically do. So Aerith and Tifa are considered dual heroines in Final Fantasy VII. But how did the creation of these two characters come about? I've never talked about this before. Nomura says Aerith was created first, but her personality was actually closer to Tifa's at the time. However, I didn't want to follow the traditional pattern, so I decided to go with dual heroines. At that point, the personality had been embedded in Aerith, split off, and gave birth to Tifa. Aerith has a fate she's carrying in the story, so her inner traits were developed to emphasize that. That is really cool. I don't think that last bit about a lot of the personality traits of Tifa actually belonging to Aerith and then them eventually becoming two characters. I don't know if that's ever been discussed before. I cannot recall any interview that's ever actually mentioned that. So that is actually some really big information in terms of like how those two characters came to be for FF7 Loreheads. That's really fascinating. And says, that's quite a rare insight. How did you approach their designs? For Aerith, I aimed to create a bright and glamorous heroine, since Cloud is somewhat a shadowy character and Barrett is a tough and rugged. I wanted her to add a touch of color, so I gave her a red outfit and a light-colored hair. Back then, we didn't depict soft textures or fine hair details. Back then, we couldn't depict soft textures or fine hair details in polygon games, so we decided to tie her hair up. Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of characters back then had tied up hair or very short hair because that was just easier to render on PS1 and PS2. That's an interesting backstory, Labs. With Tifa, we couldn't tie her hair the same way, so we made it long, which was harder to animate. But even Tifa has her hair tied at the end. This was also for ease of motion control. Yep, it was just really, really easy to do it back then on those polygonal graphics compared to like what we have now. So that's why it was kind of a common hairstyle to see back then for a lot of characters. It was just easier for the devs to be able to do their thing. What do you consider to be your unique what do you consider to be your unique strength or style? What do you consider to be your strength or unique style in character design? He says, to be honest, I'm not really sure. When people draw famous characters, they often try to make them look like originals, but like the originals. But until recently, no one really drew characters to look like mine. Even I find it difficult to recreate my own designs when you ask to draw them again. When asked to draw them again, that's so funny. However, I'm particular about the details, like a certain color or shape was chosen. So when I check other people's designs, I'll ask things like, why is this part shaped like this? It might be something others don't pay attention to. I believe those subtle settings are part of the character's personality, and in the end, contribute to the game's overall story. To contribute to this overall game and story. Sorry, I think my designs only exist because they're part of the game they're part of exists. Aww. That's really interesting because I feel like every time you see Nomura draw a new character, that is the case, right? Like, I feel like every time he does draw a character again, the character looks different than how they typically looked. He does not draw the same character the same way twice. And now it makes perfect sense as to why he doesn't do that. And I kind of get that. Him saying that makes so much sense because I think he stated before he would have done manga if he wasn't a dev. And in manga, that's really important. That makes so much sense. He would have been a mangaka. I 100% believe if he wasn't a dev, for sure. It would have been like where he fitted in the best, I think. When designing costumes, do you also think about how they'll be put on or taken off? Oh boy, I really want to know this one. I do have an idea in mind, but you probably wouldn't notice just by looking at it. I feel like that's cap. That's cap, dog. That's cap. That's cap. He does not. Okay, bro. Tell me how Lulu puts on her fucking dress. If that's real. Tell me how Lulu puts on her clothes. If that's real. That's not real. Bro's capping right now. When cosplay first started to become popular, I used to think no one could cosplay as this while drawing. But I was surprised to see that some people actually managed to do it. Lulu, bro. Lulu in particular. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Serious question, actually. Do we have a rough time frame for when Nomura started drawing all his characters in the same side on lifeless pose for every game? Oh, I know what you mean. Like the very 3/4, like facing this way pose. I do kind of wish he would stop drawing that specific angle, because I'm like, bro, you always draw that angle. Like it's like that 3/4, like looking that way pose. Yeah. And he didn't used to draw like that either. He didn't used to like do that pose for everything, but now I feel like it's always that pose, always that angle. Yeah, I feel like it was like around the time of like before Crisis when that like really started for him. With the rise of social media, it's become easier to see players' thoughts and theories. As a creator, to what extent do you think players' opinions should be reflected in the story? Oh, oh. Now this is a good question. Very much so with Final Fantasy VII Retrilogy. Players' perspectives are fascinating and often enlightening, so I do pay a lot of attention to them. As for incorporating their feedback, I don't think you need to do it at all, but there is something worth implementing, and I think it should be done. However, if you go the complete opposite direction of what players want and create a scenario where a beloved character suffers, it's not ideal for the players emotionally. Oh, I have to push back on that. That being said, simply responding to, we want this, with, okay, we'll do that, it isn't right either. The important thing is to carefully craft the story with clear intention, rather than just catering to players' desires. As for Aerith and the remake trilogy, I can't discuss that just yet. I would have to push back on, however, if you go in the opposite direction of what players want and create a scenario where a beloved character suffers, it's not ideal for the players emotionally. I would have to push back on that part. Let the players suffer. Dog, this is life. Let the characters suffer. A lot of the times, I think a lot of like favorite stories of mine have come from my favorite characters not really getting the happiest endings or the happiest things happening to them. And sometimes they've had to kind of tremendously suffer in ways that you don't want to see them really suffer. But that's what kind of furthers the narrative and furthers that character and ultimately seals the deal of the story. And so sometimes a beloved character does die, and it sucks. And it sucks a lot. And we wish for that character to not die. We really don't want them to die. At the same time, you know, you as the creative have to sometimes double down on that and seal that in, because it also is what makes the story immortal in a way, if that makes sense. You become obsessed with it, right? Like, that's why Aerith's death is such an important big deal for us. We obsess over it. We think about all the possibilities. Like, would it be possible to save the planet if she still died? You know, all these other different things. And so I do think that, you know, characters do have to die sometimes. Even our favorites, they do have to suffer sometimes. And you do have to, like, not go back on that. The important thing is to continue to feeding the... Oh, yeah. 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 I won't finish that one, but that's funny. I'm I'm sorry, I'm just reading some of this stuff in chat. Okay, let's keep going. How far ahead is the vision for the Kingdom Hearts series? The works you handle often have complex settings. How do you organize and convey them to the dev team? I don't think the team fully understands everything either. Sometimes, during voice recording sessions, the staff, other than myself, explains the settings and characters to the voice actors. They'll ask me, "This is right, isn't it?" And I'll respond, "No, that's wrong." And so there's a back and forth like that, he laughs. But it can't be helped because I'm the only one who understands even the parts of the characters that haven't been shown. The complicated storylines are something I constantly shift around and think through on my own. On the other hand, I encourage staff to actively raise questions or point out things to me as well. All right. I really don't know what to say about that one, right? Because it's very hard. It's very hard. I'm actually more curious to hear what you guys have to say about that one, because I could go either way on that answer. Like on some way, I'm like, in some ways, I'm like, okay, well, he's in our tour, right? And so, only he gets the vision. I'm sure that Kojima is probably like that too. And then in other ways, I'm kind of like, wait, so the staff also isn't really quite sure, like fully sure of like what's going on in the story. So I actually don't know how to feel about that one, purely because I'm not the guy like working on the games, and so if I was on the team, I'm sure I would feel differently about it than either way I feel now. But I'm like, I don't know. That's kind of a wild answer, right? It almost makes me wonder too, like with something like Final Fantasy VII Re-Trilogy, do like only him and Nojima like really understand fully like what's going on there, and like everyone else kind of vaguely understand, but they're like the only two that are absolute lore masters on everything that's happening there. Lost in translation, maybe. I don't know. That one's kind of an interesting question. I get him from a relative perspective, but as a manager, that's just shit. Like just a terrible way to manage a project and stuff. I get it because like as a creative, I get it because like it's kind of like, again, he is the visionary for the projects, so it is kind of like, oh, okay. But at the same time, I'm still sort of like, shouldn't we all be on the same page? Like, kind of, at least a little bit. So I do think it is somewhat like, it is not optimal necessarily. Like if everyone is not on the same page. Again, I'll let you guys kind of decide how you feel about that one, because I could go either way on that, and it's just really hard to say without working there and really getting the vision. But yeah. Sometimes I wonder if even Hamaguchi understands the story. I don't know. I don't know like actually to like what extent. I'm sure Hamaguchi has a good grasp on things, but that does make me wonder. Do you have something like a reference document for the settings? Do you have something like a reference document for the settings? I personally take notes so I don't forget things, such as footsteps of the key characters, even covering periods not shown in the story, and ideas for future developments. Okay. So these notes aren't shared with the team. No, I keep them secret. However, when necessary, I'll suddenly write out a bunch of explanations about the setting in the middle of the scenario to convey it to the team. Bro. Bro. Working for him or Kojima is probably wild, dude. Like, that's just wild. It probably feels like every day you walk in and it's like it's something new. Has to be, dog. Like, has to be. Like every day he walks in and he's just like, yeah, I got something new for you guys that I've been cooking. Nomura is the coolest guy ever. You'd never be bored working under this dude. 100%. You would never be bored. Because there'd always be something happening. Like, legitimately, you could tell. In the Kingdom Hearts series, there are foreshadowing elements that span multiple games. How do you keep track of that all? As I mentioned earlier, a lot of it is written in my notes, but I also rely on the staff to remember things. Since I enjoy watching videos, I check out gameplay videos and fan theories on YouTube as well. Rather than relying on my notes, I ask the staff members to remember how things were handled in past titles. So this is interesting. There is legitimately a chance that Nomura has watched my videos, by the way. Like, legitimately. And if I'm honest, that scares the crap out of me. It scares the crap out of me. But, you know, it's not the first time either that devs have watched my videos that I know of, and so it's always very humbling to find out for sure. But it's always like, oh my gosh, like if I knew you guys were actually going to watch this, I would have very carefully worded a lot of things, right? And I don't think I ever really say anything like offensive to them in my videos or anything like that. I just mean more like you know, I'd make certain things like really clear and a lot more like straightforward in terms of like the type of feedback I want them to hear. And so again, just noticing or just knowing that any devs could potentially be watching my videos, I always try to keep that in mind and send them the appropriate feedback. And this is something that I really try to tell you guys about too, is like, let's send the right feedback. Let's not send the wrong feedback. So something I was talking about the other day is that, like, for example, all right, when we talk about Final Fantasy 13, a lot of people just say, oh, it's too linear. That's the criticism. It's too linear. But that's not really the problem. Like if I had to list out like all the problems of that game, the fact that it is linear is probably like not even necessarily like a big problem really, per se, right? But then all that message sends to the devs is like, okay, we need to make open world games. And that's not necessarily what they need to do, right? Like, there are other problems with 16, like the pacing, right? The pacing issues, the lack of like, you know, content to do on the side, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so even with games I'm not the biggest fan of, I get really pissy whenever people go to criticize those games and they do it wrong. Right? Like, there's a lot of feedback I have for like Final Fantasy 16 and how to make that game better, for example. But a lot of you will just be like, not turn-based, or no elemental weaknesses, right? And not to say that elemental weaknesses like shouldn't be like a thing, right? But like, we have to like really be careful about like, you know, conveying like our feedback so that it's appropriate, so that they're actually listening to it and making good choices based on the criticism that we're giving, and not just listening to belligerent talking points about the criticism, right? So I do believe in making fair critique of games, but we also need to articulate those critiques in a way that also has actionable advice, that they can actually take something from what we're saying, and not just like, you know, a bunch of like belligerent nonsense. So yeah, all of which is to say, the developers are watching, the communities, what the communities are saying, they're watching the videos, what the content creators are saying, and so we do want to be careful in like the opinions that we're expressing, how we're expressing them, and it's also awesome. It's also wholesome in a way too, that they, you know, they get their energy to keep working on these games from us, from the community. And so we want to send them the right thing, the right messages. We want them to continue to make the games, and we want them to make them better with the appropriate feedback, and to also let them know too, not just like the things we didn't like, but also to let them know the parts that we loved, to let them know that this is the thing that we can't go without, right? Like, this is the part of the game that has to be there, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth having, you know, all the party members playable, right? Like, that's a message that's worth sending, right? Like, we love playable party members in Final Fantasy. Like, that is something that no matter what kind of game you make, we just want there to be playable party members, where there's different guys coming together to save the world. Because to us, that's what Final Fantasy is about. Sending those messages, wording them right, letting them know, you know, clearly what we feel is really good. I know this is about theory videos, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent about, you know, wording things properly and making sure that we're like conveying the right feedback, but it's something that I think about a lot, right? Like with communicating with the devs, so that we're not just baselessly shitting on stuff, but we're also to praising the right things and criticizing things appropriately in actionable ways, so that they can also really understand like why there's certain things. We can spend more than 30 seconds thinking about how to convey our criticisms, right? After the developers spend like 5 years working on a game, right? Exactly. Like Lying Art, yeah. They spend 5 years working on the game, and then we don't even spend like half a second to like really consider how we are like really conveying like what we're conveying about the games. So yeah. So you watch theory videos too. God, dude, he watches the theory videos. Like purely just like statistically, because I do know that Square people, they do also watch the videos in English. So like just purely statistically, he has probably seen my Versus video, my Versus 13 VRM Rex video, because the Versus 13 VRM Rex videos that I made were like trending like crazy, and those got like hundreds of thousands of views. So statistically, he probably has seen my Versus 13 KH video. Like, and I'm not trying to like, you know, like headcanon that, but like just like looking at the numbers and like the popular theory videos, if he's watching it, like just like that probably has gotten his attention. Do you ever think they've guessed it, so I'll change it, or they don't understand it at all? I purely enjoy watching them. More often than not, I think, it's not as complicated as they're making it. I'm often impressed by how closely they observe certain details. For instance, some people point out connections to the Final Fantasy series. Oh my god. Oh my god. No way. Bro, I'm convinced. But the writers are different for both, and no matter how much I'm involved in both, there's no connection between the two titles, dude. Some people. I don't know, dog. I don't know. Oops. I don't know, bro. I got a feeling. Again, maybe I'm bullshitting, you know, maybe he's never seen any of this. Maybe I'm making this up. I don't know. I got a feeling that sentence in particular, he talking about me, bro. I know he talking about me, bro. I know it. At the time of the first Kingdom Hearts game, I don't think the current developments were planned. As the series has progressed, more settings and characters have been added, making it harder to keep things consistent. Are you always improvising to adjust for that? I did have a general direction I wanted to take things from the first game. As I mentioned before, I take notes about future development. If something doesn't quite fit along the way, I'll improvise and adjust it on the spot. While details weren't fully fleshed out by the time of Kingdom Hearts 1 released in 2002, I had already planned out the next 2 or so installments. So by the time we were looking at Kingdom Hearts 3, I was also thinking about Kingdom Hearts 4 and beyond that. Well, that's definitely the case with Kingdom Hearts 3. Definitely the case with KH3 because you already know that all the seeds for KH4 have been laid out in Kingdom Hearts 3. I'm probably talking about Max's theory videos. Well, this was in like this is specifically talking about Kingdom Hearts. So, but that being said, yeah, the devs do also watch Max's theory videos and they watch other people's theory videos too. So, they do watch the English speaking world's videos. That has always been my understanding, is that the devs also pay attention to what's going on over here, and for some videos I believe they even have people that will translate the videos for them if they're really gaining attention. So yeah, even more so now. Yeah, because the Western market is like a huge chunk of their revenue now. So actually a bigger chunk than Japan. So they actually really do pay attention to Western devs and not Western devs, I'm sorry, Western customers, Western players, and like what they're saying. So it is a thing for sure. So they know basically, and also too they understand English better than you guys may think. They aren't great at like speaking it per se, but they can understand almost everything you say to them. They're really good at interpreting English, which but I mean, like, if anyone's ever tried to like learn another language, or if you've grown up in proximity to another language, understanding the language is like super easy relative to like speaking it back to people. Which can be really frustrating because you can understand everything a person just said, and then you feel like a fucking idiot trying to speak back to them. A lot of people who are like semi-bilingual, who grew up around like relatives that speak like, you know, maybe your culture's language, but you didn't grow up like really learning it. You guys probably know exactly like what I'm talking about. That you can sometimes see them react to English before the translator has said anything. Yeah, because they know their English is good enough to like to understand the things. And then also too, I think, again, from my understanding, they also have like translators who will translate stuff for videos that they're like really interested in watching. So yeah, they keep up with like Maximilian Dude and those people and like what they're saying. Especially growing up in an ethnic community, it's an odd experience to know the language but have the words that feel like tar in your mouth. Yeah. Because input and output of a language are so different, man. It's so fundamentally different. Like, you can really understand a language and then you can go and speak, and then it's just like, it's just gibberish. I get it. Me in Spanish, yeah. Kingdom Hearts is gonna sell more than Resident Evil 9. I mean, I don't know about that. But I'm sure Kingdom Hearts will sell. I mean, it'll sell pretty good. Resident Evil is just on fire, dude. Like, I don't know if anything's gonna like really sell as good as like an RE title right now. Because RE is just like, RE's insane right now. Okay. So let's go ahead and continue onward. From my knowledge, they have lurkers in streams looking for people's potential feedbacks, and they would translate them and send them on paper to Japan. Yeah, it's really common. It's really common. So let's keep going here. By the way, do you guys hear that blow dryer in the background? Sorry. There's a blow dryer going on in the background. Hope you guys don't hear it. Anyway, let's keep going. This year, the smartphone app Kingdom Hearts title, Kingdom Hearts Missing Link, is also set to release. Are you concerned that having key storylines in mobile and handheld games might make it hard for players to keep up with the story. Oh boy. Oh boy. I am glad that you asked. I am glad. I am glad that you asked that, sir. What a great question. Has anyone ever actually asked him that straightforward in an interview? Because that's actually like a really great question. Here is the reply. Yes, I am concerned. That's why the Kingdom Hearts story we're telling in the app takes place far earlier in the timeline compared to the console games. However, as people say, the newly announced Kingdom Hearts 4 is basically Kingdom Hearts 13. Since everything is still connected, and it deepens the overall enjoyment of the series. That said, both Kingdom Hearts Missing Link and Kingdom Hearts 4 are designed to feel more like new titles rather than direct sequels. I feel like he watched Donkey's video specifically with that, right? Because there was a line in like Donkey's like Kingdom Hearts video where he was like, Kingdom Hearts 3 is Kingdom Hearts 10. You guys know what I'm talking about? Oh god. Legitimately though, I really hope that he never watched Donkey's video, because that would like I love Donkey, but like yeah, he doesn't need that stress on him, because I'm very sure that Donkey's humor doesn't translate culturally, and a lot of people even here like in the Western hemisphere don't understand his humor. So yeah. Anyway, Kingdom Hearts Missing Link and Kingdom Hearts 4 are designed to feel more like new titles rather than direct sequels. For instance, this time we've brought new writers who have never worked on the Kingdom Hearts series before to write parts of the scenario. While I'll make the final adjustment, having a writer unfamiliar with the series means it doesn't feel like a must-play continuation of the previous titles. Let's fucking go! Let's go! Since Kingdom Hearts Missing Link deals with a blank period of history, it's okay to have gaps in knowledge. Those who know the history will enjoy it more deeply. Oh man, let's go, dude. Let's go. For instance, this time we brought writers who have never worked on Kingdom Hearts before to write parts of this scenario. But the real big takeaway means it doesn't feel like a must-play continuation of the previous titles, which means that it is a soft reboot of sorts. That is to say, this is not a discontinuation of KH. All the stuff that you played previously is canon, yes, but it is not going to be like, oh, you didn't play Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, 3, Birth by Sleep, Dream Drop Distance, then you don't deserve Kingdom Hearts 4, like many Sora PFPs will tell you on Twitter. That is not what they're going with. I am so happy. Based Nomura, oh my god, let's go. That is what Kingdom Hearts 4, like, oh my god, bro. That is what Kingdom Hearts 4 needed more than anything, was for this. And I'm so glad that he's aware of it, right? Like, you know, starts off the reply, yes, I am concerned. So he does think about this, because for a while, people were thinking like, does bro even consider any of this? Does bro even think about it? Like, God, dude, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. That is the right thing to say. That is the right thing to do. Holy crap. So it's kind of like God of War 2018. Yeah, that's the impression that I'm getting. It's like God of War 2018, right? Where if you know God of War, there is an enhanced sense of enjoyment that you're going to get from playing God of War 2018. However, you do not need to know every single thing about God of War to play God of War 2018. All you need to know to play God of War 2018 is that Kratos was not always a particularly great guy in his younger years. And now he has a new son, and he's trying to be a good guy, and he's trying to not be like his past. And that's all you really need to know for God of War 2018 to resonate with. That's awesome. Also, new writers in general means that Kingdom Hearts has an opportunity to feel fresh, right? Like, it's not going to be bogged down necessarily by a lot of things that had issues in the past. It means that we're going to be going in to this scenario with kind of a fresh take on the series. Like, I think like a fresh look at Kingdom Hearts is what we've desperately been needing. This reply alone takes my excitement from Kingdom Hearts 4 and like doubles it, triples it, right? Because even as someone who has played all the Kingdom Hearts games, aside from Union Cross, which apparently is the most important one, right? Because I didn't play the phone game or keep up with the phone games translations. I got punished the most for that. Like, and then fans really, actually, like unironically, are like, oh my god, you didn't play the mobile game or keep up with the translations? They're on YouTube. Bro, I'm gonna tell you straight up. I do not want to read translations of a mobile game or watch the cutscenes on YouTube. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it for my favorite series, my favorite thing ever. I wouldn't want to do it. It sucks. It's homework. I don't want to do homework to stay into my favorite game series. I don't want to do it. I don't think Kingdom Hearts as a series really warrants the need for it to be a series to necessarily require that much like external work outside of just playing the games and enjoying them. And I'm not going to play a gacha to keep up with the story. I'm not going to do that. Straight up. So I'm very glad to hear that Kingdom Hearts 4 does not require that I do that. I'm very happy. With like with long-running manga series, where it's challenging to catch up from volume 1, the Kingdom Hearts series has faced a similar issue due to the number of titles. How do you plan to attract new players? I wish I knew. As I mentioned earlier, I see Missing Link in Kingdom Hearts 4 as a reset of sorts. As a reset of sorts. I see Missing Link and Kingdom Hearts 4 as a reset of sorts. Let's go, chat. Let's go. For all the Sora PFPs that try to tell me he's not going to do that, wrong, fucking wrong. That's what my man is doing. At the very least, if he doesn't do it, he acknowledges that it's what he should be doing, right? Hopefully he does hold to it. But at the very least, he acknowledges that, hey, we cannot keep sending people back to play a PlayStation 2 game in like 10 or 20 years. I cannot get my nephew to sit down and play janky Kingdom Hearts 1, a game that was made before he was born, and a whole bunch of mobile games and a whole bunch of like cutscenes from phone games that are no longer playable, just so that he can access one title. Dude, it's not a very realistic expectation. It is why most game series don't do that. Anyway, continuing onward. As I mentioned, I see Missing Link in Kingdom Hearts 4 as a reset of sorts. With Kingdom Hearts 3, I felt like things came to an end. So I intended to reset things by bringing in new writers and designing it to be more accessible to newcomers. We even redesigned the logo with that in mind. Oh my god, gatekeeping Kingdom Hearts fans will not be getting their way. Thank God. I'm so glad that he didn't cave to the people that want to make you basically not enjoy the series, right? They want to make you do all this other stuff. If Kingdom Hearts 4 looks cool to you, play Kingdom Hearts 4. Play Kingdom Hearts 4. Jump in at Kingdom Hearts 4. Like, if it looks like a cool game, if you want to play it, if you think Kingdom Hearts 4 is like an exciting game for you, then let Kingdom Hearts 4 be your first Kingdom Hearts. Do not tell people they cannot start with Kingdom Hearts 4. Don't tell people that they can't enjoy the latest Kingdom Hearts game. Even if you do need to go back and play the other titles, let them hop in at the title that interests them the most so that they can get into the series. And then if they really like it, they'll go back and do their homework and they'll catch up on all this stuff. But just let people enjoy Kingdom Hearts 4. Dog. Please. You know? This is what I've wanted to hear. This change will make things more fresh. Yeah. I've never played KH, so maybe I'll start with 4. Start with 4, dude. Start with KH 4. Do you think 4 will be same day on PC? I hope so. Zach Pope, thank you so much for the $20 super chat. I really appreciate that. Happy birthday, you beautiful man. Oh, thank you so much, Zach. Really appreciate that. Thank you for supporting the channel and being here with us today. And I appreciate the birthday wishes. But I love telling people they're not allowed to have fun. I know. I think people enjoy that more than they enjoy actually playing video games. So the logo change had that meaning behind it. I think those that saw the ending of Kingdom Hearts 3 will understand that it concluded with Sora's story left in that state, as a way of resetting things to some extent. Kingdom Hearts 4 should be more approachable than previous entries. Of course, I believe longtime fans of Kingdom Hearts will feel this is it when they play it, but we're making it with the hope that new players will also enjoy it. I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. In a previous interview, you mentioned that Kingdom Hearts 4 will spend a lot of time in Quadratum, a field similar to Shibuya. Why did you bring a more realistic setting into a work that has always been a complete fantasy? There are several reasons, but I personally prefer worlds that feel like they might exist, rather than something that's too unreal. I feel the same way with movies. If the world is too detached from reality, it's hard to get immersed. That's why I find a setting like Shibuya, where it's based on reality but not the real Shibuya, to be dreamlike. For me, it feels more in line with my concept of fantasy rather than a complete fictional world. Hope I'm saying your name right. Brarios, is that right? Briarios? Thank you so much for the super chat. Congrats on a new level. Tomberry Prince, appreciate it so much. That makes a lot of sense, and I think that we also see that too in Final Fantasy Versus 13, and the reason he set that there, and we also see that in The World Ends With You. For example, the interviewer then says, in manga, for example, Tokyo serves as the setting in Tokyo Ghoul, Shibuya in Jujutsu Kaisen. Perhaps game players and manga readers alike have a preference for fantasy that's closer to reality. I think so too. Maybe it's easy to relate to. Also, there have been plenty of works set in medieval high fantasy worlds, and I've always felt it was okay to leave those to other creators. We released The World Ends With You set in Shibuya back in 2007, but now there are many other works set in Shibuya. It feels like everyone's come to Shibuya. Bro said, you know, I made it popular. Indeed, there does seem to be an increase in works set in real-world locations in Japan. Speaking of the unreality within reality, in Kingdom Hearts, there's the monologue at the beginning that goes, I don't understand this world, whether it's real or not. The English translation is a bit different for that, and the English localization. Was the concept of Quadratum already in mind at that time? I think that was actually part of the interviewer question. But anyway, he says here, the name Quadratum didn't exist back then, but the concept was already there. It was something I had been building up for a long time, knowing that one day we'd arrive at this point. So it's a 20-year-long foreshadowing finally coming full circle. This will be the last question. Do you already know how the Kingdom Hearts series will conclude? To be realistic, I'm approaching retirement. So it's starting to feel like a race between whether I retire or I finish the series first. That said, I'm making Kingdom Hearts 4 with the intention of moving toward the conclusion of the story. And I think that's actually the end. Thank you for sharing these valuable insights. Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy project is reaching its climax. We also can't take our eyes off Nomura as he continues to work on the Kingdom Hearts series. So yeah, Nomura is looking at retirement here. How old is he? Let me look. See if I can find it out. He's 53. He's 53. So he's still relatively young. But I see what he means by he's planning this out for retirement, right? Because you think about retirement being in like your mid to late 60s. However, if you think about game development and how long game development takes, and the fact that these titles can take like 7 years of development, if you really think about it, if he wants to actually wrap Kingdom Hearts up in like anytime soon, he would essentially need to start thinking about that right now versus thinking about that when Kingdom Hearts like 6 is out, right? Like if he wants to actually work up to a conclusion of the story and be there for that conclusion, then yeah, he needs to start right now. Alexandre, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Cheers from Brazil. Oh my God, thank you so much. Glad to know that there are people watching all the way in Brazil. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and thank you for tuning into the stream. That's so cool. I love that there's actually people like from all over the world that watch these streams. It means a lot to me. Definitely love Brazil. I used to have a Brazilian like online friend. I learned so much about Brazil from him. He taught me a lot about Brazilian politics, Brazilian food, culture. I wonder what he's doing now. I haven't talked to him in a few years, but he was a really cool guy. Given how long we've had radio silence on KH4, do you think it was announced too early? Nomura kind of even like bluntly said that it was announced too early, right? Like if I recall correctly, he was still kind of like, yeah, we announced it like really early, on purpose. So I definitely think it was announced too early because it's been like 2 years, and I don't think we're seeing it this year. And I don't even know if we're seeing it next year, but I do think that next year we'll start to get the lead up to Kingdom Hearts 4. Like, we'll start to get trailers and stuff. I think Kingdom Hearts 4 is 2026. Like, if I had to take a guess. Because if it was a year out, we would already be seeing the marketing ramp up for Kingdom Hearts 4, right? We'd already be seeing new trailers and stuff like that. I think it's 2026 for Kingdom Hearts 4. I think Missing Link, the mobile game, I think we're going to start seeing that this year. Sorry, I think Missing Link is actually probably not this year. Missing Link will probably drop next year. Like I think 2025 is when we'll start seeing Missing Link, and then Missing Link will lead into the hype for Kingdom Hearts 4, which will be 2026. Missing Link at TGS. That's kind of our next topic, right? It's talking about. So we're gonna get to that in just a second. Thanks. I've been watching you since 2022. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for being around for 2. He's been working since the early 90s for Square. That's over 30 years. I'm sure most people who work that long want to retire before their mid-60s. That number is what the government wants you to work till. Yeah, that's another thing too, is that I'm sure that Nomura has made enough money as well because, you know, not only working for Square at a very high up position, I'm sure they pay him quite well because, I mean, he could go anywhere and do anything. And he's also generated the most amount of intellectual property for the company. Like objectively, he has. And so he is worth a lot. And if Nomura was ever looking for a job, there would be so many people who would want to hire him. And so I'm sure he's paid quite well. I'm sure that retiring for him is really easy to do at this point, and that he probably collects royalties for a lot of his works as well. Not to mention that You know, not to mention that he also does freelance work too, right? Like, he'll draw works for other characters like Xenoblade 2. He did some work on, and he did the Nomura Miku, and he did the collaboration for Batman, and so he's got a lot of other things that he makes money on as well. So I'm sure that he can relatively retire pretty easily right now, even if he wanted to. For him, continuing to work is more about, well, he's like, I'm still young and I still have creative ambition, and so you know, I want to continue to work on the IPs that I've created and fostered. So K3 was also announced too early, if I recall. I mean, every Nomura game is also announced way too early. Like, they always announce his games really early. Most companies only require you work 15 to 20 years to be eligible for retirement, right? Yeah, the Nomura Batman. Yeah, he's done a lot of stuff, a lot of freelance work. So, um, but yeah, it really is. It would be really unfortunate to see him retire. I've always wanted to interview him, and I'm putting that energy out there because the last time I said I really want to interview somebody, um, I just said it on Twitter, like just publicly. I was like, I really want to interview Hironobu Sakaguchi, and I said that on a whim, right? Like, I was not expecting to actually interview Hironobu Sakaguchi a couple of weeks later from me actually making that post. And the opportunity came up, and then someone informed me like, hey, Mistwalker is taking interviews right now. Go ahead and hit up Sakaguchi and he'll do an interview with you. And I was like, no way. And so I reached out to Sakaguchi, and he was down, and we did the interview, and that was crazy because I was like, I couldn't believe that I got to talk to Hironobu Sakaguchi. It was like the most craziest thing ever, right? Because you know, you spend basically your whole life reading interviews that people have conducted with this guy, and then suddenly you're the guy doing the interview, and it's really cool. It's like it was insane for me. So, you know, what I'm really hoping is that, you know, Kingdom Hearts 4 coming up, I'd love to be able to interview Nomura. I think that like there is nothing that my teenage self would feel more fulfilled by than knowing I got to interview. So that would be crazy. That would be awesome. So I'm gonna put that energy out there. If anyone knows anything, or if you know a person, if you know a person who knows a person, anything else like that, yeah, please tell them to reach out to me or have me reach out to them. And that would be great because I want to be able to talk to this man before he retires. That being said, I can only see Nomura being like a Hayao Miyazaki or like a Hironobu Sakaguchi when it comes to retiring. These are people who are creatives down to their bone. And while they may get tired of working, because who doesn't, creating things is like what they do. Like, that's who they are fundamentally. And it's so hard for me to imagine them not creating. You know what I'm saying? Because that's who they are. It's like it's in their DNA, it's in their cells, their blood. I don't think they would ever like stop creating. And so Nomura, even if he were to retire, you know, within like 10 years, I cannot see him stopping. I cannot see him being like, okay, I'm done. He is absolutely going to continue to be an influence. That being said, what the hell would Square do without him, right? Because Square relies on him so much. Oh my god, Max, thank you so much. Happy birthday from Sweden and congrats on 100k subs. You're one of the best gaming industry YouTubers. Thank you so much. Max downgrades. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All the way in Sweden, dude. We got Sweden, we got Brazil. We have so many different countries here today. I think we had Canada earlier. You guys are amazing. It always really touches me again to know that like different parts of the world are, you know, part of this community. Again, Max Downgrades, thank you, like 1,000 for that. I appreciate it. You're the best. I hope SE is cultivating more creative talent. I hope so. I hope so. Because they really do. They rely on him and his IP and his brand name quite a lot. Quite a lot. And of course, yeah, we got the UK here. Awesome. Yeah, Square Enix relies on Nomura a lot. And it's really hard for me to imagine like what they would do without him. Right? Because he is the driving force behind Creative Studio One. And it's almost impossible for me to imagine what that studio would be without him. Right? It's like, you know, what's going to happen to like FromSoft when Hidetaka Miyazaki, you know, eventually retires, right? Like, what are they going to do? Aging is very depressing, guys. I say this on my birthday. Aging is depressing. Aging sucks. Here we are. I'm turning 33. And let me tell you, getting older is not fun. Not fun. We all know it. But that is what we are. We are mortal creatures that live and die and get old. Sucks. Me too. I hope her being promoted to an oversight position in 14. Ishikawa was working on something big. I don't know what it is yet. Hello, I'm I'm in on outreach on behalf of Tetsuya Nomura. He said he would like to do an interview with you, Ryan. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. Beltima, thank you. And when the fuck is Miyamoto retiring? bro has been like, I don't even know. I actually think that Miyamoto will actually like continue to work for like the rest of his life. Like I don't think that. I feel like Miyamoto is just not retiring. At this rate, I think Aonuma will actually retire before Miyamoto does. There's always a spiritual successor, of course, yeah. Um with Nomura, I don't think you can't, man, you really can't replace like what he does, because it's just like, you know, he doesn't just design the games, he also creates the characters and has like this iconic vision. So much of Square, like intellectual property, the very idea of Square is so fundamentally tied to a lot of his creations and a lot of his works. Most of the most iconic Square Enix things that you think of are designed by him, his idea. He's had some type of influence, for better or for worse. Uh, and so it's really hard to kind of detangle the collective Square Enix identity without him. And so, you know, I do think if he does retire, you know, within the next 10 years, I would really wonder, you know, what would happen to Square and how they would continue to really maintain their that, you know, that sense of identity for them. Because, you know, you can't really imagine Square without Sora or Cloud or like, you know, like those sorts of characters now have become so intertwined with the Square Enix identity that it's like it's inseparable, right? Like maybe if you go all the way back to like the early days of Squaresoft, that's like the only way you can really think of like Square without him, right? But like for the most part, the Square Enix modern identity is deeply tied to who he is. So, but that's also good in a way because we have like a lot of young upcoming creators, and I would love to see them also get their opportunity to shine and be wonderful creators who are you know, are able to contribute their own intellectual property, their own art designs and everything. And I'm sure they'll all do well. You know. eventually you do have to let the younger generation take over and continue to maintain these IPs. So, with that being said, we got one more topic to talk about. And that is Square Enix's Tokyo Game Show, which is going to be pretty interesting here. Actually, chat, let me let me go to the bathroom real quick, and let me catch my breath because I've been talking for a really long time. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Okay. I'm sorry about that. I just needed to. I hope you guys have enjoyed this Allegra ad that's been playing. By the way, real quick, slightly on topic, has my microphone been good, like my mic settings and everything? I played with them recently, and I tried to make my audio sound like really crisp and really good. I assume that it's been doing good, but if you guys would like, let me know if the audio quality is like, you know, audio quality ting. Like, sounds also, hello Lily, it's been a while. Yeah, hopefully it sounds good. You know, we got the share mic. I got like, I've changed some things around. Remember, my mic is on this side. I tried to move it away from my computer. My computer fans aren't captured in the thing, and then I play with the audio settings and the noise gate, and I'm super like picky about audio. So I just wanted to make sure it's all good. Okay, so anyway, the thing that we're here to talk about next is the Square Enix TGS lineup. So here's what's happening with the Tokyo Game Show that's announced. And of course, we'll probably get other announcements too. Yeah, is RPG site kind of crazy on the ads. Is there like another? Is there another place where I can look at it? Because there's so many ads on here, and those ads aren't paying me, right? You know, I don't know. So, oh, can we look at the Square Enix? Right? Oh, this works. So here's the confirmed lineup: Dragon Quest III HD 2D, Romancing Saga, Fantasian Neo Dimension, Final Fantasy 14, which is at every gaming show, Final Fantasy 16, Life is Strange, Dragon Quest Monsters, Power Wash Simulator, and Visions of Mana. Do you not use uBlock? I try not to use ad blockers, dude. That's hypocritical. I make money on ads. It's like one of my main hustles as a content creator. How hypocritical would it be if I was ad blocking but also made my living on ads? I would be like I would be a big hypocrite. So I try to actually not use ad blockers. So I feel like it doesn't make sense for me in my position as a creator. And also when you watch your favorite YouTubers, always turn off your ad block, please, because you know, if you really want to support them, just watch the ad and then skip it or whatever, because yeah, helps us out. Anyway, neither here nor there. The most exciting thing of the confirmed lineup is going to be Fantasian Neo Dimension for me. Obviously, I was a huge fan of Fantasian on iOS. It is a great game. If you haven't played Fantasian, you have so much to look forward to with this brand new 4K version. For those of you who are big fans of PS1 Final Fantasy, this game is going to do so much for you, and you are going to absolutely love it. It feels like they made a fourth PS1 game for Final Fantasy. I mean, for PlayStation 1. It feels like they made a fourth secret FF PS1 game, and it is so good. And I'm so excited for more people to be able to play it free from Apple Arcade. It is a game that never belonged on Apple Arcade in the first place. I know Apple funded it. I know it wouldn't exist without Apple. But holy crap, man. It's a game that I feel like a lot of Sakaguchi fans should be playing it. Also, after people do play Fantasian Neo Dimension, I'm telling you, there's going to be a ton of people who are going to be like, they need to put, they need to make Final Fantasy 17 turn-based again. There's going to be a lot of people saying that after they play Fantasian Neo Dimension, because Fantasian does have like a really cool turn-based battle system. It kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy X's combat a little bit, but it also has like its own unique twist on it. And I feel like there are going to be people who have this strong desire for the classic FF style, and they are going to be really, really loud after Fantasian drops, because Fantasian is going to give them exactly that. And they are going to be saying, how come we don't have Final Fantasy titles like this? And to be honest with you, how come we don't have at least a Final Fantasy sub-series that is like more traditional to FF? It is a question. Like, it is a very valid question that cannot be denied. And I'm willing to bet that after the reaction and reception of Fantasian, we'll probably see games like that. Like, one of the interesting things too is that Sakaguchi is going to be working on a new game, and considering right now that he's working with Square, it's worth considering that Sakaguchi's new game may also be in collaboration with Square. Right? So Sakaguchi might actually be involved in like in bringing back maybe a classic turn-based Final Fantasy type style. Or at the very least, I could see him, creating like a brand new IP, and that could also be done with the partnership with Square Enix. So, Octopath's not a Final Fantasy. Like, I do get what people are saying though when they say like, like Octopath or like all these other turn-based games that Square Enix is putting out. but none of those are like Final Fantasy games, right? Like, is Final Fantasy just a turn-based game made by Square, and like any turn-based game that is made by them could just substitute out and be Final Fantasy, right? So I do feel like, you know, the other side of that argument would also be that like Bravely Default, again, that also kind of like files under like what I'm talking about too, where it's just like World of Final Fantasy. Again, none of those titles that you guys have mentioned is really like Fantasian. Fantasian is like a PS1 FF, right? And that specific style and that specific presentation, I don't think any of those games actually like really match. But Fantasian actually does, right? Like Fantasian actually feels like you're playing Final Fantasy 9 2. And I don't think that like Octopath or Bravely Default feel like that. Like they're not designed to be that. They're very much Final Fantasy inspired, but they're not like, oh, this is actually a Final Fantasy game, literally, in the sense that Final Fantasy has always been. They're very close. They do a lot of things similar, but they're not that, right? World of Final Fantasy was cool, but also at the same time, though, too, I don't think that World of Final Fantasy is still quite what people expect. When I talk about doing like a sub-series of Final Fantasy games that are like actually like traditional turn-based like FF games, I mean making them like an actual spin-off series of Final Fantasy that is like full numbered games. They play and are exactly what you expect of Final Fantasy. They're called Final Fantasy, and they just continue the PS1, early PS2 DNA, Super Nintendo DNA, right? Like I think that people would actually be really into that. And also too, like, you know, if what it takes for people to be into it is to call it Final Fantasy as opposed to calling it like, you know, Octopath. But I don't think Octopath is a Final Fantasy. Like I don't think it is. I think it's a turn-based game made by Square Enix, right? But then that also kind of like that also kind of shows a problem when it comes back to like Final Fantasy identity stuff, is that like we could just call any turn-based game or that nowadays any turn-based game that has Square Enix's logo on it is a turn-based Final Fantasy. It's not, even though it's not called Final Fantasy and doesn't necessarily try to do what FF does or try to be what FF was. But if it's a turn-based game for Final Fantasy, like that has some Final Fantasy inspiration and is made by Square especially, then everyone's like, oh, that is the Final Fantasy. It's like, it's not. Like Bravely Default's not a Final Fantasy. It's very close, or it almost was in development, but it ended up being its own series, right? So they specifically chose to not make it FF. Same with Octopath. So no, I don't think those games are like a sub in for like for the people who are still wanting Final Fantasy, you know, because even then, if Final Fantasy is just a brand name for the new thing, then why not just slap Final Fantasy on everything, right? Like, and that again, that gets into the identity stuff. What actually makes something cross the threshold of being Final Fantasy, and what makes something not be Final Fantasy, right? So I think that consideration or that conversation alone to me highlights kind of an issue with the identity of FF. But anyway, neither here nor there. Of course, they'll be showing off Final Fantasy 16's PC port, which is already released. You can go ahead and play it now. It's also interesting. They're going to have Visions of Mana there too, which is, again, you can already play now. Really kind of the big headline game is probably going to be Dragon Quest III HD 2D. Now, let's talk about the bigger stuff, the speculation stuff, right? Could this be where we finally see FF9 remake? Could this be where we finally see Kingdom Hearts 4? My thoughts on Kingdom Hearts 4 appearing. KH4 is not showing up until Missing Link is out. So I think until Missing Link has finally seen its release, you should probably not expect the lead up of KH4's marketing. I think that they want to push out Missing Link first, and then we can go into KH4. Missing Link in itself is used as kind of a marketing tool for KH4 to generate hype. And so I think they want to be able to direct you to Missing Link, to go and play that game first, to go and download that game right now. And also they want to have space between Missing Link and Kingdom Hearts 4. They don't want to launch them at the same time. I think they want to give like a year out between the two. So I think that you'll see a similar lead up like Ever Crisis, right? Like how Ever Crisis was kind of delayed to line up with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think you're going to see that exact same thing happen with Kingdom Hearts 4 and Missing Link, as in that Missing Link will kind of kickstart the Kingdom Hearts 4 marketing. So until Missing Link is out, don't really expect anything from that. Final Fantasy IX Remake is entirely possible to make a reveal here. I have a good feeling that they probably want to reveal that game relatively soon. All of the rumors that we have said that Final Fantasy IX Remake is late into development. We've seen that they've even been messing with the Steam and Epic Games listings for the I'm sorry, not Steam. They've had an Epic Games leak recently that kind of showed that FF9 data had already been entered, such that they're already preparing the store page for Final Fantasy IX Remake, including the pre-order incentives, which lets us know that Final Fantasy IX Remake is pretty late into development. Wait, really? Yeah, that was like a few months back, a couple of months back, where they had also had the Final Fantasy IX Epic like kind of like database that leak that happened. In that leak, yes, Skylian points out the Tactics remaster was also in that leak. So it's entirely possible that we'll also see Final Fantasy Tactics get announced here. So that's another big thing. There's also a rumor for a state of play, right? So we're not just looking at the potential of the Tokyo Game Show delivering this. We're also looking at the potential of the state of play happening, this week or next week, leading into or leading out of the Tokyo Game Show that could potentially have any of these games in it. Tactics Remaster, I'm really particularly interested in. Again, that was also in the Epic database leak, and then Final Fantasy IX Remake. And it's really possible that that could happen then, but we don't know. Final Fantasy IX Remake, I mean, the game has just been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, and so it's just really hard to say. That's just me being really optimistic, because I do think that Square needs to have a big game announced right now and a big game that they're marketing toward. And right now, guys, there's no big Square Enix game that's happening, right? There's no big game that we're looking forward to. And I think this is the first time in Square Enix history that we don't have a big announced game that's coming out, right? Like, we've always had like, before we had like 16 on the horizon, we had 7 on the horizon. We had, even back in the day where 15 was on the horizon, like FF7 Remake Part 1 had already been announced. So this is actually kind of the first time in Square's history that I can really think of that we don't have the next big Square Enix title like really like looming over. We don't even know what it could be. Like, I guess we know that Dragon Quest 12 is coming, and we know that Kingdom Hearts 4 is coming, but in terms of like Final Fantasy, this is like it's never been like this big of a question mark. So we do need to get like a big title out there. Yeah, with Dragon Quest 12, guys, I don't think Dragon Quest 12 is coming like anytime soon. I think Dragon Quest 12 is far off. I think it is further off than Kingdom Hearts 4. Legitimately. I think that it is Dragon Quest 12, 2026. No, I think Dragon Quest 12 is 2028 or 2027 at the earliest. I think DQ12 is way off, right? when DQ 12 was announced, we didn't get a character. We didn't get his in-game screenshot. Dog, we got a logo. We got a logo. I think Dragon Quest 12 is far off. I think it is way far off. I don't think it is anytime remotely soon. So DQ 12 is going to be a while, right? Like I don't think that it's happening anytime soon. The Dragon Quest 3 HD remakes and the 1 and 2 remakes, those are going to kind of fill the void for a new Dragon Quest. That's kind of been the utility of remakes in general, right? Is that when we don't have a new mainline game, we put out a remake in between. It's been happening with a lot of franchises, right? Like, you know, take Persona, for example. Persona 6 not quite ready yet. But hey, you know, like, please enjoy Persona 3 Reload to bridge the gap between that and Persona 6. And so that's kind of a way in which a lot of companies keep you engaged nowadays, is that they have remakes that happen in between these massive mainline titles that just take forever to make. And so I think Kingdom Hearts 4 is 2 years out, as I said earlier, but I think Dragon Quest 12 is 3 or 4 years out. And so I do feel like Dragon Quest 12 is probably a lot further out than people think. So we do need a massive Square Enix game that is coming soon. It would make a lot of sense that if the next big Square Enix AAA game is like Final Fantasy IX remake, because again, like, you know, in terms of like next year, for example, what's the big Square Enix game that's coming next year, right? Like, what's the big AAA Square Enix game that is coming for 2025, right? It almost, if you think about it, it almost has to be FF9 remake, I would imagine. I know that sounds crazy, but if you think about it, like, you know, because Kingdom Hearts 4, I don't think that Kingdom Hearts 4 is coming next year. I think we would know about it if it was coming next year. It would be a lead up right now. And there isn't a major game that is announced right now. What else could be as far along in development? Right, exactly. Like FF9 remake is the only thing I could think of that could be further along in development than we think, and could be coming mid to late 2025 for them. Because right now, I don't think they have any major HD titles announced. In fact, we know that they don't. Because look at this. This is the Tokyo Game Show lineup, right? Like, we know that they don't have anything. And so they have to announce something either at the rumored State of Play or at the Tokyo Game Show, or it being at both, right? Because right now, the way things stand, we don't actually have a major title, like a major AAA HD game for them, flagship title, coming in all of 2025. There's nothing announced, right? There's nothing that we know of that's coming. And so they do need something to fill in that gap. And if you really think about it, that would be the smart thing to fill in the gap, assuming that it is far ahead enough in development. What I'm concerned about is that Square Enix not having a general stream presence to reveal new titles or updates on already announced titles. Yeah. If Square can make a new IP that focuses on an abstract, deep anime art style with the fidelity of an Atlas RPG, they would make bank. Atlas games are insane because the budgets are so modest. Yeah. I mean, Atlas games budgets are like insanely small usually, and like, yeah, they like, you know, Persona like will come out and it'll sell like 1 million plus units, and so it's actually funny too, because if you think about it, like Persona 5 cost like a fraction, like a drop in the bucket compared to like how much like Final Fantasy 16 costed, and Persona 5 made so much more money. That game made so much more money than like any Final Fantasy game, because it didn't cost as much to make. They re-released it 3 times. They sold 7 million units. It's a game that mostly reuses the same setting for 120 hours. And it's not even fully voiced. 7 million units sold, by the way. Persona 5, that game made so much more money than something like an FF. It's like ridiculous. So. They've tried making AA games, but none of them did well, like Valkyrie Profile and Visions of Mana. You're right, yeah. That's kind of the thing too, is that I think a lot of people will say, "Oh, Square should double down on AA games." Square has made a lot of AA games, like a lot. Like the past generation, oh my god, they've made like a head-swimmingly large amount of AA games. Like they've done so many, and almost all of them have fell flat. I don't think any of them really exceeded expectations. The only time they made something AA and it did like insane numbers and it like blew up, the only one time was, and this is arguable because it's like on the higher end of AA, but Nier Automata, right? Like Nier Automata wasn't like an aggressively like AAA like big budget game, but it was really, really well done. And it was done well enough that it could blend in kind of with other AAA games, not really stand out in a negative way. And so Nier Automata did like phenomenally well. It's at like 8 million units now, which, by the way, Nier has sold more than any Final Fantasy since 15. So it sold more than 7R Part 1. It sold more than 7 remake. I mean, sorry. It sold more than 7 remake. It sold more than 15. It sold more than 16. It sold more than Rebirth. And yet, despite all that, they have not come out with another Nier game. It's like, it baffles me, dude. It baffles me. Nier is so powerful as an IP. Do you guys like think about how Nier is so popular and has been out for so long now that we have Nier likes, but we don't have a third Nier? Like a proper third Nier. And please don't tell me that Nier Reincarnation is Nier 3. If it was Nier 3, it wouldn't be shut down right now. So it's not Nier 3. I mean, I want an actual mainline Nier game. Lily, you haven't played the Nier games? Oh my god, you gotta play the Nier games, man. Nier is the best new IP that Square Enix has had in like since they were Squaresoft. I would actually venture to say. Is that an accurate statement? That is an accurate statement. Nier is the best new IP that Square has had since Squaresoft. Like, yeah, play Replicant and Automata for sure. It's their best new IP. And what's funny is that even though it's their best new IP, selling incredibly well. People love Nier. Very well written game, beautiful music. Automata at the very least has great gameplay. Replicant Remaster's gameplay is good. Still doesn't quite get as good as Automata's, but it's still pretty decent. So it just sucks. Who do you think is doing Final Fantasy 17 and how far along do you think it is? I actually, for the first time ever, I have no idea who's working on Final Fantasy 17 or like the next Final Fantasy, I should say. Like this is the first time ever. Normally I have a good idea, right? Like I was talking about how like Yoshi P was going to work on Final Fantasy 16 2 years before it was announced. Maybe even longer. I was talking about it back in like, actually I think it was longer than that. I think I was talking about it back in like 2020 and 2021. Or no, that was longer than that even because it was announced then. So I think, yeah, no, it was like 2019. that I was talking about, like, oh, I think that Yoshi P is going to be working on Final Fantasy 16 because I was like really digging into it and I was really looking up everything that it could be or who could be working on it, and I was like, oh my god, all the puzzle pieces line up. It's definitely Yoshi P. It's definitely Creative Studio 3 working on it, and it made sense, right? This is the first time that like I've looked at everything and I legitimately cannot tell you who the fuck is working on it. Like I legit don't know. There is some speculation that Ishikawa might be working on it as she has stepped into a supervisional role for Final Fantasy 14. So she's not hands-on writing. Well, we don't know. We legit don't know. And I don't think it's Creative Studio 3, by the way. Like I don't think Yoshi P is working on it. I haven't seen anything that suggests that Yoshi P is working on it. I do think Yoshi P is working on quite a lot of stuff that people don't know about. There has seemed to have been like a lot of indication of that, but I don't think they're working on Final Fantasy 17. I don't think that's what they're. She's quite present in 14's development. She's credited on the trailer. I don't remember My Hero doing that. That's possible, right? Even then, it's just a guess on like who could potentially be involved. I get the vibe that Yoshi P wants to focus on being an exec outside of 14. Yeah, I mean he is working on Tactics Remaster. That's like for sure. I can guarantee you that much. We're still not sure who's working on 9 Remake. Yeah, I don't know either, but that'll also be really curious. But I think that like even bigger question, like I don't know who could be working on 17, right? Because with 9 Remake, there's a lot of leeway for who could potentially be working on it. With 17, there's typically only 2 teams that work on Final Fantasy mainline now, and that's CBU 3 and CBU 1. So it's really interesting that we just straight up don't know if either one of those is working on it, and CBU 3 doesn't seem to be working on it, and CBU 1 could be working on it, but it seems weird because CBU 1 seems so busy with 7 Remake, and so Taro is working on it. That's funny. But even if Taro is working on it, you'd have to ask who the dev team is, right? Like, who is backing up Taro for that project. So I also, and I say this as a Taro stan, by the way, I love Yoko Taro. I would not want him to work personally on Final Fantasy 17. I feel like Taro should be making more Nier. And I feel like anything that you put him on that's not Nier is a waste of his time. And a waste of like Taro fans' time, right? Because the thing is that Taro has like a very weird style of game that I don't think fits Final Fantasy, that I don't want Final Fantasy to be, but I do love quite a lot, and I think is great. And I think Taro should be making his own works that are owned by him, where he doesn't feel like he needs to conform to like Final Fantasy. You know what I'm saying? I think he needs to do that. We're getting Part 3 news at TGS, so that's another thing. Final Fantasy 7 Remake Part 3. I can say with a great deal of confidence, we are not getting Final Fantasy 7 Remake Part 3 news at TGS. That is still quite a way off. Final Fantasy 7 Remake Part 3 is going to be at least, I mean, even 2025, like early 2025 is pretty optimistic, like insanely optimistic. I think a reasonable timeline for part 3 would be like late 2025, like Game Awards 2025 would be like a reasonably optimistic timeline. However, I think a more realistic timeline for part 3, like full reveal, is that I think part 3 reveal late 2026, release early 2027. I think that's like the most realistic timeline. So it could be announced like, you know, it could be announced like, let's just say it'll be announced September 2026, and it'll come after Kingdom Hearts 4 is and like released, like either after Kingdom Hearts 4 is released or shortly before Kingdom Hearts 4, right? Like one or the other. But somewhere in that lead up to Kingdom Hearts 4, it'll be announced, and so you'll have that to look forward to after you complete Kingdom Hearts 4, and then it'll release in like February to March 2027, because that follows the same pattern that they've been going on. So do not expect Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, rebirthing, unbirthing, afterbirth, reincarnation, Final Fantasy VII, reborn, retargeting, re-envisioning, whatever they call it. Don't expect that at TGS. Reskinned. Revengeance. At the very least, I like the Square Enix leadership would have asked Taro to do 17. Whether or not he says yes is a different matter. I think he'd say yes if he was asked. Resolve, Retribution, yeah. It has to be called Reunion. I don't care if they use that name already. So here's the thing. Part 2 is going to be called Reunion. Rebirth was going to be called Reunion, right? And then Nomura said that like he saw that they already used Reunion for the name for Crisis Core. So that made him throw Reunion out. So Reunion has already been tossed. Like it's already been like, Nomura's already been like, what the fuck? They already used it and had to throw it out. So unfortunately, Reunion is not an option. Although I agree with you, ORM, like it sucks and it's dumb, and they wasted the perfect name for part 3 on Crisis Core Remaster. I'm like, what the fuck were y'all thinking? Why would you like, you could have named the Crisis Core Remaster anything else. You could have named it like Crisis Core like Re-Squat, like Re-Buster Sword. You could have named it anything. No one would care. You pissed away the perfect name on like Crisis Core Remaster. Like, what the fuck were you thinking? Oh god. Dumb. Terrible decision. Especially considering they didn't want to change anything story-wise, right? Crisis Core Remaster would have been enough. Yeah, I know. And apparently the reason they didn't call it Crisis Core Remaster is because they said that like the amount of work they did on Crisis Core, they felt like Remaster would be underselling it, because people would think that it would be an HD port like a lot of remasters are, super lazy port. Final Fantasy X. Yeah. But like it wasn't. They actually put a lot of effort into Crisis Core's remaster, Crisis Core Reunion. And so, I mean, the graphics are like really stellar. They reworked the combat. It is a really impressive remaster, and it is what remaster should mean, right? Like, I think that that's like what we should actually call a remaster, and not just like we upscaled the game into like HD, and like some of the textures have been like ran through like an AI filter. Oftentimes not even like an AI filter. They've just been like upscaled and like blurred a little bit, and they call that HD remaster. I do think that Crisis Core Reunion actually sets like a standard for like what an HD remaster should be. Yeah, I mean, I would love a Final Fantasy 13 remaster as well. But I do think that like if we're gonna do like a Final Fantasy 13 remaster, a Final Fantasy 13 remaster should be closer to what Crisis Core Reunion is. Maybe Crisis Core should have been Rebirth instead. No, Rebirth is too cool of a name to like waste on like a spin-off title, right? Like Crisis Core Rebirth does sound awesome, but it's still kind of like, damn, that name is too tight, like to be used on like, you know, like a side game like that. That's too clean. Like Rebirth is like cool. That's like a dope name, right? Like you don't want to like just piss that away on like, oh, this is like the spin-off game that we made. Like we're redoing that. Nah. I think that like if I was like the one like pitching the name for like what the third part should be, I would call it Final Fantasy VII Reincarnate. Because I think to me like that's what like fits the naming scheme the best, like out of all the words that I've seen, right? Like reincarnate, like because after rebirth, reincarnate, right? Fits the theme. Fits also like the idea of being like a remake, right? Because all three retitles, or all two so far, you know, you have remake, and you have rebirth, which is another way of saying like remake, right? And so I think the best thing you can do is then have reincarnate, but it probably won't be reincarnate. Remake, rebirth, reborn. The only problem with like reborn versus rebirth is that that's just the same word with a different tense. So I feel like with like, you know, like if you're that close, it just would be like it would sound dumb, like rebirth versus reborn. I feel like that would be like a Wii U situation almost. I get it, but like it's a little too close. I feel like marketing wise, Return would also be a great name. Yeah, I agree. Final Fantasy VII Return is also fits that same type of thing where it's like Final Fantasy VII Remake, Rebirth, Return. All three titles say that this is Final Fantasy VII is back again, without explicitly being like, yeah, FF7 back again. So Final Fantasy VII Reconsider. Final Fantasy VII Rehab. Oh, Final Fantasy VII Rehab, dude. Let's go. Let's go. Oh man, Revelations. Revelations would be really cool. I actually kind of like that one too because I think that Revelations could be like really thematically appropriate because I mean, you know, biblically you have the book of Revelations, right, which kind of depicts the end of the world. So it kind of has like that biblical tie. But then it also has like, you know, revelations for the story, right? Because we have this big new mystery for Final Fantasy VII, and so Revelations, this is where everything gets revealed. Um, so Revelations, I think, is actually a really good name because it, you know, again, thematically ties, mythology ties, um, just a whole bunch of different things that really work. So Revelations actually um, really works for me. Another title I think that also like really works is like Final Fantasy VII Repent has also been thrown around by some people, and I thought that was actually like a really really fucking cool name. A really fucking cool name is Final Fantasy VII Repent. Right? And it kind of ties into like Advent Children Cloud being like, I want to be forgiven for my sins. Redeem is also in that vein, right? Restitution, repainted, reparations, reparations. That's funny. Rehash, redundant, repose, resolution. Final Fantasy VII Resolve. I do like that one. Revolution makes me think it's gonna come with a Wii controller. Refund. Final Fantasy 7 Redux. You guys think about how we're getting a fucking Horizon Zero Dawn remaster and we're still not getting Bloodborne remastered. That shit pisses me the fuck off. What the fuck, Sony? Are you for real? Yeah, I'm for real. We're getting Horizon Zero Dawn remaster for PS5. Dumbest shit in the entire world, bro. Dumbest shit in the entire world. At the very actually it's literally dumber. It's literally dumber than the Last of Us remake. Because at least the Last of Us remake, The Last of Us was a PS3 title, right? And even though it got remastered, right? You could be like, "Oh, okay. We'll bring it up to like to PS5 standard now, right?" So at least there was like some leeway, and not even to say that the Last of Us remaster or remake was worth it, but at least then there was some like leeway to say, okay, well at least they had the Last of Us live action coming out, and they just want to put out like a re-release of the game so that people will buy it after watching the show. But Horizon Zero Dawn remastered is the dumbest shit possible because it's already a PS4 game. You guys, and I may have mentioned this before, like I started playing God of War 2018 with my girlfriend, and she's watching me play through it because I really love God of War and I wanted to get her into that series. And so we're doing like a backseat playthrough. She solves the puzzles. I fight the enemies. And it is so crazy because we're both looking at that game and we're both just like, how do video games look better than this? How do they look better than this? Because this game is so damn good looking that it's like impossible to like look any better than God of War 2018. It just looks so good. And we're just in awe of it. And I'm in awe of it, right? 6-year-old game, and it's still like the best looking thing that I've ever seen. And I'm just like, it's insane to think that like what are they gonna do? God of War 2018 remastered. Personally, I miss stylized stuff. I do too. I do, this is like a hot take. I do enjoy me a good movie game sometimes, right? Like some people like hate like a God of War or Last of Us or like whatever. I enjoy me a good fucking movie game. Like I like like I understand that they're not like that sustainable or whatever, and I agree with that. But like I enjoy me like a very cinematic Sony like first party game. I do like it. I don't think every game can or should be that because I don't think it's practical or sustainable. But I do like it. I do like me a Sony movie game. Part of the reason I do is because I can play them with my girlfriend. She can watch, and for her, she can get into the story and the characters in the world without it. But like, yeah, I don't think we can keep doing them in perpetuity. Oh, for sure, I love them too, but I'm tired of that being like the standard now, right? And the industry is crashing because that's like being the standard. I didn't mean that to like refute your comment on stylization, Lily. Just clear, but yeah, because I agree with you like very strongly about stylized visuals and stuff like that. Um, but all of that's to say that like I do feel like graphics can't get any better, right? Maybe I'm wrong. The only quantum leap that I can see graphics taking over the next few years is that like if AI somehow is able to like allow us to generate like really insane looking assets at like an aggressively fast and cheap rate, perhaps that's the way that like video games continue to look better and better and not like shit the bed in terms of like production time and cost. Moore's law is no longer true. Pursuing power just isn't worth it anymore. Yeah. And that's what I realized when playing God of War 2018, right? Is that like honestly speaking, not many PS5 games look as good as God of War 2018. The bottleneck is no longer processing power, dude. The bottleneck is like literally how much money do you have? It is no longer like, oh, the PS5's GPU can't put this on the screen. It's literally like, oh, we can't afford that many people to literally make those graphics, right? So honestly, like if you look at like what's been happening recently with like video game graphics requirements on PC, um it hasn't been like increasing very much. Like it stayed the same for like a really long time. Yeah, I already covered the Nomura interview. I might cut that into a video actually and post it. Yes, precisely. They can make far more advanced looking games right now, but the return on the investment hasn't been there, right? What's the point of a 5090 when the 4090 is so good already? I don't know. I don't know, man. Like, and that's like the problem that like we all that I kind of foresee like right now is that like is that it's just like you get a graphics card, like a really good graphics card right now, and like what do you need? Like what else do you need to do? Like it's not like I know a lot of console like people on console side, they're like, "Oh, you're gonna have to replace your graphics card like every few years." And like, dude, I promise you that like I had a 1080 Ti up until this year. I did not have a reason to actually replace my 1080 Ti. The only reason I did it was because um I got an ultra wide monitor and I wanted the full 240 hertz refresh rate on it, which is insanely fucking smooth, by the way. Um, but like, I didn't really need it. Most games ran at 60 frames, not at like ultra, but at high. And by the way, people need to stop saying that console games run games on ultra. They don't run games on ultra. Console games run at medium settings. So if you want ultra settings on games, that like literally only exists on PC. Just FYI. Because a lot of people have like this impression that console games run on ultra. They don't run on ultra. No, like no console game runs on the ultra equivalent settings for games. Not even like Sony first party games run on like their actual ultra equivalent settings. They do when they get to PC. But like on actual hardware they run on medium, at most they run high, but like none of them run native ultra. Like they don't. I don't know how that's become like a common repeated thing, but like yeah, anyone will tell you that like the actual games like running on console, they're not like running on ultra graphics most of the time. Um but yeah, I could run them like at the same quality for the most part. 1080 Ti didn't have like the ray tracing aspect, so I couldn't do that. But yeah, so I mean like I didn't have to upgrade, most of the times. Um I just did it because I had the opportunity, I had a good sponsor that was allowing me to be able to upgrade. But like, guys, genuinely, I didn't have to upgrade at that point. I just upgraded because I like wanted to, and like it was easy to do, take advantage of the sponsorship that I was given. But like, yeah, like like graphics cards like last year, I've kept my 1070 for like 7 to 8 years, replaced by a 6950 XT now. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Like those 10 series Nvidia cards have lasted people like a decade, right? Like and like sure, like if you want to argue that you want to always play the games at like the latest highest settings, then like you may need to upgrade your graphics card every 5 years, sure. But like if in terms of like just playing the games, you can get like a top of the line graphics card and like you'll be able to play games, all the latest games, for like 8 to 10 years, which is what a lot of people do. And so people will point to like, you know, Steam metrics for like what people have for graphics cards, but it's just like, you can argue that like, you could say that like, oh, you know, the latest graphics card doesn't play Baldur's Gate 3 at like the highest quality graphics. But I'm like, yeah, bro, but the Steam Deck plays Baldur's Gate 3. And while it may not be at the fidelity of like PS5, like it plays Baldur's Gate 3, right? Like it plays the game. And so, like if you want to play Baldur's Gate 3, you can do it on a Steam Deck. You know? And so that's kind of the advantage of PC is kind of like it can also play the game when it can't play the game, if that makes sense. It can still run the game like even when somewhere else may run it better, right? And you'll have that PC for a really long time. And so that's why people are such big fans of PC. After all, you know, my PC is not just my gaming device. It is also my my work machine, right? I make all my money through my computer, right? So, computer's pretty valuable in that sense, right? Having a good one. For the amount of money that the 4090 is worth, it should give me this sloppy jalopy. You don't need that high specs? Yeah, you don't. You really don't. Like my 4070 Ti Super is like so raw in power that like I like, what the fuck would I need a 4090 for? And I have a deal that's gonna let me upgrade to the 5000 series. So I'm really gonna be like so OP in terms of like, you know, what my computer is gonna be able to do when the 5000s like come out, and I'm just like, holy shit, like what do I need even more for? Right? Because let's suppose I get the 5070 Ti Super, right? Which is what I'm planning to do. When I get like the 5070 Ti Super, games are going, and games already run like, I can run like Final Fantasy like 16 probably at like 120 frames, and like I don't even know like like it's gonna be so much power that I'm just gonna be like, what do I actually do with this, like to actually utilize like all of it? I don't even actually know, like what will I actually even do? And that won't even be like the 5090, which I suspect the 5090 will be the size of a refrigerator. Because the 4090 is already so big. You know what? I actually wish they would like take a generation off and just be like, you know what? We're not making more powerful graphics cards. We're making smaller graphics cards. Like I would actually appreciate that more at this point than like, yeah, we made the most powerful graphics card ever, and it's like massive, and it's just like, dude. KYH9, thank you for the $5 tip. I really appreciate it. May not be seeing it with the background here, but I see the tip. Switch 2 specs look astounding, but what's even more exciting is the chance that Nintendo have opted for a Lovelace optical flow accelerator. It's the part that lets the 4000 series do frame gen with DLSS, and it could be their silver bullet. Oh man, yeah. Because I was looking at Switch 2 specs, and Switch 2 is not more powerful than like Steam Deck, right? And so I'm like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. But if they have frame gen, then that's a game changer, right? Because, you know, they'd be able to run those games at lower frame rates and then use the frame generation to help that out. So that would actually be really cool. So if they could have DLSS, that would be dope. More powerful than a PS4 with DLSS? Yeah, that would be exactly what they need. PS4 Pro and docked, really? Because from what I've seen, it didn't sound too much more powerful than like a Steam Deck. But if it's a PS4 Pro when docked, that's amazing. That would be like a game changer, right? especially if it was solid state. Because like I think if you had like PS4 specs, but you had a solid state drive, you'd actually get like some pretty fucking solid performance, right? It's probably the biggest bottleneck is going to be like solid state. But I don't even know because Nintendo games will probably still run off the cartridge. And that's going to inherently be slower probably than installing on an SSD. But we'll see. SSD plus PS4 plus DLSS. Yeah, that could actually be pretty fucking OP. Actually, now that you mention it. If you do that, you could probably not really get toward PS5, but like you could probably make PS5 games run if you strip them down. That's not fucking bad at all. I hope to God, like what you're saying right now is true. Because it would actually make Switch 2 fuck. Like hard, like heavy fuck. And if that's the case, then like Sony would like realistically need to watch out. Like for real. Because if they could make that work, that would really start to like, you know, pull developers away from like focusing on DLSS is more power efficient than native rendering. DLSS will extend the battery life. Oh, the fuck, that's crazy, dog. Bro, I hope you're not just hyping me up. If that's real, I would really fuck with that pretty heavy. That would be pretty cool. Switch 2 is between this PS4 Pro and Series S in docked mode, apparently, and has DLSS. That's real? Okay, because I knew there were some Switch 2 rumors coming out today. I didn't know that. Wow, okay, fuck. Like, base PS4 was all I was hoping for, like, honestly. This guy did a study and showed that you can cap resolution and frame rate, and DLSS is more efficient than native rendering. It's real. Oh, fuck, man. Oh, fuck. Now I'm hyped for Switch 2. I wasn't hyped before, but that's got me hyped. I think PS4 is all the power you need. Hot take. I haven't seen anything that's justified more than the PS4 for like console gaming. Right? Like anything more than that, I just want a PC. Right? Like I don't want anything more than that for like console gaming. Console gaming to me is not 4K 60, right? Like that type of stuff is PC. Like if I want that aggressive, like I just don't expect that from a console. That's part of why like PS5 Pro is like cool, but it's just like for that money, like I feel like that's like what I buy a PC for. Right? For me, what PC gaming is like pushing a game to like its absolute max limits, right? That's what I want a game on PC for. Like to see how well impressively good it can run. I don't think about console gaming like that, right? Like console gaming is like this is an affordable box for people who don't understand how to make a PC or don't want to make a PC or deal with the inconvenience of it. It's about getting first party games and stuff like that. And sometimes they run at 60 frames per second. Most of the times they don't, right? But I just never like really associated like console games like really anymore with like being like the most cutting edge like thing that it's supposed to be. I just think that like yeah, console price s performance ratio for bleeding edge gaming isn't worth it anymore. Right, exactly. And I think that like you know that's like the whole thing about consoles too is that like it's great performance for the price. The for the price part is like you know the big thing there, right? You can always make a better console, right? Like they could have made PS4 arbitrarily, for example, an even better console, right? But they didn't want it to cost more than $400 because $400 was the price that you know that people would buy in on. So like a console's value to me starts to get tenuous whenever we exceed a certain price point. Then I'm like, why am I buying a console? Right? Like if I'm caring this much about graphics and performance, I'm just going to buy a PC. So I've always thought that the value of a console is to be, you know, a reasonably priced box that allows anyone who doesn't have the technical knowledge of like required for a PC to buy a game. But if your whole if the thing that gets you off is playing the games with the best frame rate humanly possible, with the best graphics, at the best resolution, I just don't understand like why you're dealing with the console in the first place, right? Like I guess it's money, but then it's just like if like that's your hobby, then like I don't know, it's kind of like having cars as a hobby and then like not being able to like afford to do car guy stuff. Right? Like being a car guy is an expensive hobby, right? Like not just like owning a car, but being like an actual car guy, right? And consoles are kind of like, you know, just buying like a stock car that you buy from any dealership. And so I don't know. Do we need like affordable race cars? Is like what I'm trying to say versus like, you know, race cars are race cars for a reason, right? And so, hey, it's Brian. Thank you. I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. I don't get cars, man. I just take the train and I'm happy. It's probably because you're from a place where there's good public transportation. In America, we don't have many cities with. We have like 3 cities with good public transportation. Most of our public transportation's ass because our politicians won't fund more of it. It's terrible. Sucks. What can you do? In places like Texas, it's really hot, but like we should definitely have a train system between Houston, Austin, and Dallas. It's just ridiculous that we don't. Abolish Honda Civics to save the car industry. Holy fuck. Oh, that's fucking funny. Okay, guys. I'm going to go ahead and like end the stream here. I am going to be back tomorrow on stream. We'll be chatting some more. And then we'll also be playing the Bloodborne DLC, I believe, tomorrow. So if you're looking forward to that, please show up. I need you there. I'll be very lonely. I will cry. And I'll be pissed because you said you were going to show up. Why did you leave me? Okay. Okay. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Bloodborne stream. All right, later, guys. We're going to rate Unileska if you're on Twitch and if you're on YouTube.